Mark McGwire, 52 home runs last year, 28 in the first half of this season, including this one against Randy Johnson last Tuesday. And is already a legendary clown. Juan Gonzalez, the American League MVP last year, with 47 home runs, 5 more against the Yanks in the division series. 2 last night here in Oakland. It's Gonzalez and the Rangers, McGwire and the Athletics on the Game of the Week. It is a beautiful evening, late afternoon here on the shores of the San Francisco Bay. Tonight, the ESPN Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week, the Texas Rangers and the Oakland Athletics. Hello, everyone. I'm John Miller along with Joe Morgan, and tonight the Texas Rangers, sort of an enigmatic ball club. They had their first ever divisional title last year, and now they are struggling. Coming into play last night, they had lost 9 out of 10, beginning with a 4-game sweep at the hands of the first-place Mariners. They finally got a win last night, and they dearly need one tonight. They face Steve Carsey and, of course, Juan Gonzalez. 2 home runs last night for Texas.
Well, you're right. He missed the first month of the season, so they got off to a slow start. Now he's starting to swing the bat very well. And let's take a look at the pitches he hit last night for his home runs. First one's a curveball that he hits over the 362-foot sign for his first home run, his first time at bat. And then the next time at bat, fastball inside, and he drills that in just about the same spot over the 362. So when you have a guy like Gonzalez, who was last year's most valuable player, when he starts to get hot, it kind of picks up the rest of the guys. And they really need him because right now only Rodriguez and Will Clark are swinging the bat consistently well.
All right. Now, for Texas tonight, Kenny Hill. He was their ace last year. He's been struggling as well, and he'll be in tough tonight against the likes of Jose Canseco and, of course, Mark McGwire.
Well, you're right, but Kenny Hill, his last 2 starts, has thrown the ball exceptionally well. So they need him to lead the staff. He is the leader of the staff. But when you have a guy like Mark McGwire, even guys like Randy Johnson can't contain him. Last Tuesday night, he hit one of the longest home runs ever in a Major League Baseball game. I mean, let's see if we can follow this one. I don't think we can get high enough in the Kingdome to find where that one hit. But tonight, Kenny Hill will be trying to keep Mark McGwire in the ballpark, along with Jose Canseco.
All right. It's the Athletics and the Rangers. We'll see Ivan Rodriguez, who's having an outstanding first half, on his way to the All-Star game. And the Athletics and Mark McGwire coming up. The ESPN Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week is brought to you by Nike, who encourages you to participate in the lives of America's youth. Baseball at the halfway point. 1997, the Oakland Athletics, in fact, have finished their first half of the season, having played 81 games. For the Texas Rangers, it's a first half really to forget about so far. There's Johnny Oates, the Rangers manager, and of course, he and the Rangers have seen better days. In fact, just last year. Here's the Pepsi Rangers batting order. Mark McLemore at second base. Ivan Rodriguez is the catcher hitting second, just having a great year. He, a catcher, leads the American League in base hits with a .353 average. Rusty Greer in left field also having a fine year, .337 average. Gonzalez, the MVP in right. Will Clark at first. Lee Stevens, the DH. Dean Palmer, third base. Domingo Cedeno at shortstop. And Damon Buford hits ninth in center field. On the mound for the Oakland Athletics, the young right-hander Steve Carsey, acquired in a trade for Ricky Henderson from the Toronto Blue Jays. A great prospect, but he has been racked with injuries the last 3 years, Joe, and he's just starting to round into form right now.
Well, they've really pinned a lot of their hopes for the future on Steve Carsey. They think he should be the leader of their staff for the next few years, and he has struggled. He's pitched some fine ball games, but has been inconsistent. Good fastball, curveball, and a change.
Mark McLemore will lead it off. Carsey, 25 years of age, from Flushing, New York, which also houses Shea Stadium. And here's his windup. The first pitch of the ball game is called a strike. We are underway at 5:06 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Bright, beautiful, sunshiny day with just patches of cloudiness here and there. Curveball, base hit. Now that leadoff spot has been a real difficult spot for the Rangers this year. They really have had very poor production from the leadoff spot. Last year, their leadoff man was Darrell Hamilton. They let him sign with the San Francisco Giants across the bay from here, and they have not really been able to adequately replace him as the leadoff man. They were hoping that Damon Buford might be able to do the job. Buford has struggled, and everybody else has as well. McLemore struggled early on with a bad hand, finally had some surgery, and he's just, these last 2.5 weeks, getting back into shape. Here is Ivan Rodriguez, and now you get into that Ranger power and you stay in it for a while. Rodriguez, Greer, Gonzalez, Will Clark, Lee Stevens, Dean Palmer. They can all hurt you. But right now, Rodriguez is the man having the big year. 353. And that is ball one.
The amazing thing about Rodriguez is that he is a catcher. He catches almost every day. And it gets awfully hot in Texas, and he's thrown up just unbelievable numbers. And he seems to get better each year as a hitter. He's already the best defensive catcher in the league, and he just continues to get better as a hitter.
Look at that. He's caught all but 4 of their games this year. That's a foul out of play. And the count now is 2 strikes to Ivan Rodriguez. Or rather, let's see, 1 ball, 1 strike. I beg your pardon. The first pitch was not a strike. 1 ball, 1 strike. Rusty Greer is on deck.
McLemore at first is not a real threat. He's stolen only 1 base and been caught 5 times.
Rodriguez a free swing, chased a high one there.
And the reason I say he's not a threat is because Carsey gives you time to run. He has a pretty big high leg kick. He's a big guy, so it takes him a little while to unfold, but McLemore is not a real base-stealing threat at this point.
Yeah, 1 steal for the year. That's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. He's been caught 5 times. But if you watch Carsey, he does not get rid of the ball real quickly.
There's that big leg kick. That is foul past the first base side. 1 ball and 2 strikes to Ivan Rodriguez.
John, you're talking about how good Rodriguez is. It's very seldom you see a catcher hitting second in the lineup. Usually that's reserved for a guy that just hits the ball the other way, can bunt and do things like that. Rodriguez, of course, can hit the ball the other way, but he's an offensive threat. He's not up there just to sacrifice and move the runner along.
No, in fact, has not had a sacrifice bunt this year. Into right field. Fighting the sun out there. Stayers. Wow. So this is awfully tough, especially on the right side this time of day with that bright blue sky overhead.
Well, you see, you're looking directly into the sun at this time of the day in right field, and watch him. He's shading his eyes. He has his sunglasses on. Now watch him duck his head. I mean, I don't know how he caught it. Watch him. Now watch his head. He ducks his head long before the ball gets there. He just puts it where he thinks it's going to end up, and he does a good job. Nice play there.
Well, the fact that he ducked his head shows that his brain is still functioning properly. And fortunately for Stayers and the Athletics, his glove did not follow. It stayed right up there. 1 down, Rusty Greer. Now, Rusty Greer is hitting .337. And he's sort of the unknown Ranger star. I mean, he got 10 homers, 22 doubles, 39 runs batted in. He walks a lot. He steals some bases. He's a fine outfielder. And nobody ever heard of him. And I tell you what, Joe, it was interesting in the interleague play. Texas played San Francisco, and they played Colorado, and, you know, some of the National League teams. People saying, well, who's Rusty Greer? And he went nuts against those National League teams. They couldn't get him out. I think he was 13 for 21 the first go-round. McLemore is running. In the dirt. Good catch and jag there by Bornegal, but McLemore had it beat.
Well, a lot of things had to go his way for him to make that. He did not have a great jump, even though, see, he doesn't take off until Carsey's halfway up. Now, he's going to be out if the throw is anywhere near the back, but it bounces. Now, watch, the throw bounces. Bornegal has to fight it, make the catch, and then tag him. If the throw is there in the air, he's out easily. So he did not get a good jump. Just a lot of things went his way on that particular steal.
So now the Rangers have a man at second base for Greer. Juan Gonzalez is on deck. And up and road sort of passes between the sun and the Coliseum for a moment. And it darkened the area around home plate there for just a moment. There was nothing wrong with your television set. Now you can see even now some clouds kind of putting some little shadows on parts of the ballpark. Curveball knocked down at third by Brosius. In time at first. Recovered to get Greer.
John, I mentioned that Carsey takes a long time to deliver the ball. 15 out of 16 base stealers have been successful this year against him. And you do steal bases off the pitcher, not the catcher.
2 down, and here comes Juan Gonzalez. Gonzalez, 47 homers last year. Joe mentioned the fact that he missed the first 24 games of this season with an injury to his hand suffered in the winter ball. He also missed 28 games all told last year and still hit 47 homers and had 144 runs batted in. He drove in more runs than he played games last year and hit 314. Really holds that bat high back over his head. That's a strike. He had got 10 consecutive games without a home run, and that was one of his longer droughts. I think 39 at bats without a home run, and then he hit 2 last night against an Oakland rookie, Brad Rigby, who was making his major league debut. And they were big home runs. They were the only runs the Rangers scored, and they won 2-0. He's challenging him here. 0-2 the count.
Well, the one thing about home run hitters, especially the guys with big swings like Gonzalez, they get in a groove, and they may hit 10 or 12 home runs in a week. And then when they get out of the groove, I mean, it takes them 2 weeks to get back in. So it's not surprising to me that a lot of the sluggers who have long swings do go in and out of home run spells. They do have some droughts.
Now, Gonzalez, it tells you how good he is because it seems like he's not having a real good year up till now. Chases that high one and lofts it foul out of play. 2 strikes the count. He's only played 53 games this year, and he has 53 RBIs. Now, that's, in most books, that's a pretty good year.
Yeah. Here you see where he was last year, and the only difference was his batting average, so to speak.
Well, so to speak, yeah. That's about, he might have scored a few more runs if he was on base a little more often, but otherwise.
Well, they're making an effort to keep the ball in on him when they throw him fastballs.
Headed for right field and through the hole. Coming around third, McLemore, and he will score easily. Stairs will throw to second. So Juan Gonzalez does not hit it well, but it certainly got the job done. A rare single to right.
Well, he found the hole. It was actually a good pitch by Carsey. Probably needed to be up a little bit. Watch, they're trying to pitch him inside. They want to pitch up. Then he doesn't get it up, and he gets it out over the plate a little bit. He still jammed him, but he finds the hole on the right side. If he would have gotten the ball where he wanted, up and in a little bit more, he probably would have been able to get Gonzalez out. But that's the trouble. If you make a mistake with good hitters, they make you pay.
Now there are the 2 sluggers talking slugger talk. Mark McGwire and Juan Gonzalez exchanging notes. McGwire may be asking us, now, on your ball club, when you get like a cheap hit like this, do you count it? Here's Will Clark, and that's too low for ball 1.
You know, you're right, John. Only the big guys, the home run hitters, talk, you know, like that. When a little second baseman, a little slap hitter goes down to first base, McGwire doesn't even say hello to him. You know what I mean? The big guys always talk about hitting the ball out of the ballpark.
Will Clark, the hitter. And this time that hole was covered up. Second baseman Spezio was right there, and Will Clark was thrown out. Well, Mark McLemore's stolen base leads to a run. 1-0 Texas as Ken Hill gets ready to take them out. ESPN Sunday Night Baseball from Oakland. The Rangers have a run. The Athletics are coming up. There's Art Howe, the manager of the Athletics. And both he and his ball club hoping for better than they've had so far here this year. Here's the Athletics Pepsi batting order. It will be rookie Jason McDonald in center field, a switch hitter. Rafael Bornegal, red hot at shortstop. Matt Stairs, also real hot in right field. Mark McGwire, 28 home runs. That's 1 every 9 3/4 at bats. That's a pretty hot pace. It will be Jose Canseco. He's been swinging the hot home run bat of late. Jason Giambi had a long hitting streak just ended, hitting over 300 for the year. Scott Spezio, a very talented young second baseman just back from the DL. Scott Brosius, the slumping third baseman, and Brent Maine is the catcher hitting 9th. And on the mound for the Texas Rangers, the veteran right-hander, a 16-game winner last year, to be the Rangers' anchor in that rotation. Ken Hill, but look at that, only 4 wins so far this year.
Yeah, he has definitely struggled this year, John, but last year he took the ball on opening day and he set the tone for the entire staff for the remainder of the season. Their starting pitching was excellent last year, and Kenny Hill was the leader of that staff. And let's take a look at the defense behind Kenny Hill. And there you see the defense. Not as good as it was last year, and it's highlighted by Ivan Rodriguez. Look at that. I mean, he's thrown out 45% of the runners who have taken their liberties on him, and he says he likes to see them take off. He likes for them to try to steal on him.
Dan Wilson of the Seattle Mariners actually has a percentage a little bit better than Rodriguez, and I'm surprised to see that. He's only second best in the league in terms of the percentage of men he's thrown out. Here is Jason McDonald.
I think Dan Wilson's probably surprised too.
Well, he has a good arm.
You're right, but I mean that's something that Rodriguez continually leads the league in, and that's runners caught stealing.
Into right center field, that's a base hit for the young McDonald. McDonald in his 22nd major league game. This is his 60th at bat. He came in hitting .237, and he runs real well.
Well, you see, now he's a singles hitter. Will Clark hasn't even spoken to him at first base. Didn't even say hi to the kid. But watch when one of the sluggers go out there. They'll start talking and having a good time.
Slugger talk.
Yeah.
Is Rafael,
whatever that is.
Yeah. Oh, come on. You had your years where you talked to slugger talk. You took a few trots around the base paths. Rafael Bornegal. There's that arm. Testing the rookie. And McDonald hurried back to the bag.
Well, Rodriguez gets rid of the ball very quickly. With a right-handed hitter up, you're in trouble if you're at first base. Look at that. He doesn't have to throw around the left-handed hitter. If you have a left-handed hitter up there, it's a little more difficult for him. But with a right-handed hitter, you better stay close.
McDonald. And the ball is fouled by Bornegal, and the count is 0-2.
He had a pretty good jump there. Even though it was hit and run, he looked like he was trying to steal the base, which is what you should do if you're a good base stealer. Don't just wait for the batter to protect you. Just try to steal it yourself. And Art Howe's the kind of guy that likes to hit and run. As a hitter, he likes to hit and run, so he likes to put the hit and run on.
So McDonald there looking over it. Ron Washington, the third base coach. Rodriguez has picked off 5 runners this year, either at first or second. McDonald is running again. There's the throw. He got him. Wow.
Wow, right. I mean, that's amazing right there, John, because Kenny Hill, watch this pitch. He has a big high leg kick. McDonald got a pretty good jump. Now watch how high he kicks his leg. Look at all that time. I mean, and Rodriguez gets a low pitch. Now he has to get rid of it. Look where the ball ends up, right on the money. That's why he wins Gold Glove, and you can see definitely out, and a good play at shortstop.
Tag made by Cedeno. Over in left center field, there's Rusty Greer, and Bornegal is out number 2. So 2 men gone with nobody on base. Well, I dare say, Joe, that probably the only catcher in the league who would have thrown out McDonald with everything else being the same is Rodriguez.
No doubt about it. I mean, that was almost, I mean, the ball was low, and the guy had a pretty good jump. I mean, he just threw a strike. If he throws the ball anyplace else, he's safe.
So it was strength and accuracy we saw from Rodriguez there. Now, here's Matt Stayers, and this guy has been a revelation for the Athletics. But a check swing. He didn't mean to do it. Kenny Hill throws him out, and Mark McGuire is left on deck. 7 pitches, and that man, the Rangers' secret weapon, Ivan Rodriguez, strikes again. 1-0 Texas after 1. And a called strike to Lee Stevens. We're underway here in the second inning. Lee Stevens, Dean Palmer, and Domingo Cedeno. Stevens, big, strong left-handed swinger. Carsey misses. And it is 1 ball and 1 strike. Stevens has 9 home runs this year in only 171 at-bats, or 1 every 19 times up there, 34 RBIs. And the only reason he really even got a shot with the Rangers is because Will Clark opened the year on the disabled list. So they stuck Stevens in there sort of out of necessity. And he opened the season hot. I mean, he gave them some great power, filling in for Will Clark. Up the middle. Spezio made the dive. Couldn't quite get there. And I don't think it would have mattered had he been able to. Base hit for Stevens.
You're right, John. If he would have dove and made the stop, still wouldn't have helped him because he was too deep when he would have made contact with the ball.
There's the aerial view of the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum complex with this ballpark, the home of the Athletics and also the Oakland Raiders, and across the way the home of the Golden State Warriors. Dean Palmer, the hitter, right-handed batting slugger. Although this year he's not been doing much slugging. Check swing foul. I mean, this guy hit 38 home runs last year, and so far this year only 7. Now that's some serious power that they've lost so far this year.
Yeah, there are the numbers at this particular point. Last year, you mentioned he already had half a season almost. He had 19 and he ended up with 38. So at this rate, he'll only end up with 15 or 20.
Johnny Oates, Ranger manager, sort of demanded that this ball club play a certain way, and they molded him. Johnny Oates always wants a ball club that plays the game well, that is fundamentally sound, and the Rangers, really for the first time in their history, became that ball club last year. And their defense was one of their primary strengths a year ago. That is strike 3 called, and the best fastball thrown by Carcey, 91 miles per hour, the reading on that one.
Well, what Carcey is doing to the big right-handed sluggers, he's staying in tight. Even Ivan Rodriguez, he did the same. Everything's been inside. He wants this pitch down. He doesn't get it down, but he gets it on the inside part of the plate. And it's a third call strike. Called strike 3 against Palmer.
Steve Carcey. 1 on, 1 out. 1-0 Texas in the second. Here's Domingo Cedeno. Switch hitter. Fly ball along the left field line. Drifting over is Giambi in foul territory. There's a lot of foul territory in this ballpark, except in the left and right field corners where the stands come out. But you see off of third base and first base, I mean, there's a huge expanse of foul territory in this ballpark, probably more than any other ballpark. 2 down, and here is Damon Buford. Dodger Stadium's got a lot of foul territory. Candlestick across the bay from here has got a lot. The Kingdome in Seattle, but in particular here, there's a huge expanse of foul room. Here's Buford, the son of former Major Leaguer Don Buford. And Damon takes his sinker in there for a called strike.
And John, San Diego, all the ballparks in California really have quite a bit of real estate, extra real estate. And with the price of real estate in California, that's unusual. That's surprising.
Well, what? You want to go build a home down there where the bullpen is, or what?
That's surprising that they use up all that extra space for no reason.
I made so many good offers in that bullpen in real estate down there, and they turn me down every time. 1 ball, 1 strike to count to Buford. That's an interesting way to look at it. I hadn't thought of it that way.
Only California ballparks have that much extra space.
Right back to Carcey. And McGuire with a putout. Well, McGuire will be trying to hit that ball 500 feet here in a moment. McGuire, Canseco, Giambi. Coming up. ESPN Sunday Night Baseball coming to you from the eastern shore of the San Francisco Bay. Off in the distance there is the city of San Francisco, and we're inside the Oakland Coliseum. And for the first time in the history of the 2 franchises, the 2 ball clubs will meet in the regular season this Wednesday afternoon and Thursday night over in San Francisco. The A's and the Giants will have at it with the next go-round of interleague play. We'll see McGuire step over across the bay and Canseco. And Joe, interleague play certainly did provoke a lot of interest and a lot of talk around the country in the first go-round.
Well, the National League fans who got a chance to see Mark McGuire and the American League fans who got a chance to see the Barry Bonds of the world, I think they were all excited. In fact, last year, Barry Bonds and Mark McGuire were the 2 finalists in the home run hitting contest at the All-Star game, at Home Run Derby. Bonds beat him out.
Well, speaking of Home Run Derby, I'm anxious to see McGuire and Canseco take their cuts at Coors Field in Denver. Now, that won't happen until the end of August. And, of course, The question will be, will McGuire still be with Oakland by then? Well, here he is. He's with the Athletics today, facing the veteran Hill. He hits a soaring shot deep to left field. Greer back at the wall. He watches it go. Number 29 for Mark McGuire. McGuire with his 29th homer, his 62nd run batted in. And the fence kind of cuts out pretty quickly there. That's straightaway left, but 367 feet away.
Well, they've been getting him out with fastballs this weekend. This fastball is supposed to be away. It's about the middle of the plate, belt high, just where he likes it. And he hits the ball out. He likes the ball down, and he hits it right over the Raleigh Fingers retired jersey sign. Not a good pitch from Ken Hill.
You see that 367 marker. That ball was hit about 8 miles high. Well, here's Canseco. And he throws him a slider in the first pitch, and it's 0-1. Canseco's got 17 home runs for the year, although his batting average is way down. He's 9th in the league in home run hitting. Right to the third baseman, Dean Palmer. Jungles it. In the dirt, pulled out by Will Clark, and there's one away. Now let's get an update. Here's Bill Pito.
All right, John, Cards and Reds, they had a 1-hour, 26-minute rain delay in the 11th. We're now on the top of the 12th, tied at 5. Ron Gant, base hit, scores Danny Schaefer, and the Cards now go up by the score of 6-5. They're playing the bottom of the 12th. John, back to you.
All right, Bill. The Cardinals and the Reds there. The Cardinals can hang on to win that ball again. They'll remain one game back of Houston in the National League Central. They got a real tight race going on there, but nobody's playing very well over there. That's a called strike to Jason Giambi. We mentioned the unknown star of the Texas Rangers, Rusty Greer. Well, look at this guy's numbers. .313 batting average, a slugging percentage over 500. And this is the second year in a row where he's hit the ball with authority, and he just had a 25-game hitting streak that came to an end recently. Jason Giambi.
Well, he got off to a slow start, John. And, you know, because he was learning a new position, that was, you know, playing left field. But he's been swinging the bat very well lately. He says he feels real sexy when he's hitting. He said that he hits line drives, and he compares it to, you know, some of the sexy men in Hollywood about if he's hitting 320, he feels like certain guy. If he's hitting 220, he feels like someone else. But he says he feels real sexy when he's hitting.
A very provocative fly ball to left. And it's caught by Rusty Greer. Jason Giambi tried to drive us wild, but it's just a routine fly ball to left. Lacking, truly, in sex appeal. Giambi last year in his first full season in the big leagues had 20 homers and 40 doubles. And he's come back this year with 21 doubles the first half of this season. And 8 more homers. Here is Scott Spezio. Spezio, if the name sounds vaguely familiar, it should, because he comes from a baseball family. You probably, I don't know if you ever played against his dad, Ed Spezio?
Yes, I did.
And how'd you do? Did you spike him? Take him out at second base?
No, I didn't do those sort of things. I just made him jump.
So Scott Spezio grew up around the game. Went to the University of Illinois. And they think he's got a chance to be an excellent hitter. Just recently back to the disabled list. Caught in center by Buford. And that's it for the Athletics. But Mark McGuire with a big fly. 358th home run. 1-1. The ESPN Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week is brought to you by the more than 1,575 AutoZone stores across America. AutoZone, the best parts in auto parts. And the first pitch is too high to Mark McLemore, the leadoff man for Texas. 1-1 the score. Juan Gonzalez with an RBI single in the first inning, and then Mark McGuire with a soaring home run in the second. 2 runs. So our 2 spotlighted players have each knocked home a run here so far. McGuire scored the Rangers run with a single, a steal of second, and then come in on a single by Gonzalez. bluffs the bunt, takes a strike. 2-1. Mark McLemore with only his second steal of the year. Although, in fairness to McGuire, McLemore, he did steal 27 bases last year. And that's out of play into the second deck. And there's that final, the highlight we just showed you a little while ago. The Cardinals did hold on to win, and Cincinnati in 12 innings, 6-5. Ray Lankford is just having a sensational season. He's opened the year on the disabled list. Lankford came into play today hitting .332 over the National League. And the Cardinals have had the good fortune this year that even though they've had a real slow start, the whole division has started slowly over there. National League Central. 3-2. The best record in the National League Central, Houston, 40-41. 1-1 the score in the third inning. Juan Rodriguez on deck. The curve from Carsey misses. He curved him on 3-2. And it's the walk. Well, with that victory for the Cardinals, here's the way the National League Central looks now. Houston won its ball game at Wrigley Field. Pittsburgh was beaten by the Mets, and look at that, even Cincinnati 13 under 500, they're still in it, only 6 out. And the Cubs, it's not looking good.
Yeah, but they're still in it. You're right, because they're under 10 games.
They're only 8.5 out. That's right. Somewhere one of those ball clubs is going to get hot, though. And if everybody else continues to struggle, that may turn it around. And of course, the Cardinals started slowly last year, although they weren't still under 500 this late into the season last year, but they're well capable of getting hot. Well, McLemore stole a base in the first. Ivan Rodriguez, the hitter, and a called strike. It's 0-1.
John, I'm very surprised, and I think that's one of the things that shows why they missed Terry Steinbach right there. They threw a 3-2 curveball to McLemore, to walk him. And Carsey's best pitch is his fastball. Why, McLemore's not going to hit the ball out of the ballpark that often. You make him swing the bat. They threw him a 3-2 curveball leading off the inning. So they walk him. I don't think Steinbach would call a sequence like that.
That is past the diving Brocious. Base hit to left field. McLemore will stop at second. So Rodriguez is 1 for 2. Now you've got Greer and then Gonzalez.
Well, the interesting thing there is you throw fastballs to the good hitter and curveballs to the guy that's struggling a little bit.
And that's part of the process that Art Howe has had to put up with and have to be patient with, the development of guys like Carsey. Carsey really missed most of 3 years with the arm problems. And eventually, and now he calls Brent Maine, the catcher, out to talk with him before they pitched to Greer. Eventually, he had the Tommy John surgery. Last year, when he was making his comeback, pitching mostly in the minor leagues, they wouldn't let him throw a curveball. They felt he wasn't ready to start snapping off the curveballs yet. That had been one of his great pitches. So without the curve, he developed a changeup. And that one is a foul and back out of play by Rusty Greer.
Well, they shouldn't have let him throw a curveball there either.
Yeah.
3-2. I mean, with McLemore doesn't have any home run, make him hit his way on to the bases.
There's McLemore at second and Rodriguez at first, and the Rangers in a 1-1 tie get the big hitters up. Rusty Greer grounded out his first time. Foul off to the left. And a fan of the second deck brought his glove, and he made the catch at the railing in the second deck there. There he is. But you see that cup he just put down? He spilled everything that was in that cup. And somebody down below not only did not get that baseball, but they got his beverage right on the head. 0-2 the count. And that one is a shot into the crowd just off to the left. Juan Gonzalez is on deck. Rusty Greer, I mean, shouldn't be a real secret. His career batting average is .313. 336 so far this year. He hit .332 last year with 100 RBIs. Too far inside by Carsey. 1 ball and 2 strikes. Greer, who lives in the Arlington, Texas area now, born in Fort Rucker, Alabama, went to the University of Montevallo. You ever play them, Joe?
No.
Just a little bit low on the outside. 2 balls and 2 strikes. He grew up rooting for the Boston Red Sox as a team, but his favorite actual player, George Brett, also a left-handed hitter. See the steady climb there of his batting average over the years. 2 balls, 2 strikes. McLemore at second. And Juan Gonzalez on deck. So this is very difficult going right now for Carsey. And it could be a turning point in this game, even though it's early. That is fouled off to the left. I mean, he cannot afford any mistakes here. The Rangers have a chance now for a big inning, the way it started off. 2-2 to Greer. McLemore led off the inning with a walk on a 3-2 curveball. Rodriguez then hit a single just past Brocious at third. Greer battling it out with Carsey. There's that changeup, and it misses. So he's gone as far as he can go with Greer, with Gonzalez coming up next. It is 3-2.
And we'll take a look and see if Johnny Oates wants to put the runners in motion here.
Gonzalez figures he might have some RBIs there out there waiting for him when he gets up now. Runners are not going. Greer lifts a high fly ball to center. The deepest part of the ballpark. McLemore back to tag up at second. There's the catch by McDonald, and McLemore will race over to third base. 1 down.
In the first inning, Gonzalez got a base hit to right field, but they had a definite game plan to watch. Everything is inside. See the target. Watch the catcher's glove. See where he wants this one up. Got that one up. He wants it up again, but he doesn't get it up, and he gets it out over the plate, and that's a base hit. So if you're Gonzalez, you realize that they tried to pitch you inside last time. You might sit on the first pitch fastball inside and try to jerk it. And if you're the A's, you say, well, I think I can get in on him, but make sure if I miss inside and not miss out over the plate. So we'll see how they attack him this at bat.
McLemore at third. Rodriguez at first. 1 out. The middle infield double play death. So they go in, but miss.
Well, it's okay. If you're going to go into the big sluggers, if you miss, make sure you miss inside. Don't miss out over the plate.
Now, the man on deck is the veteran, Will Clark. You see, Gonzalez has already hurt the Athletics this year. There's Clark, left-handed hitter, who came into the game hitting .345, but he has not been driving in runs this year. They go in again, and there's a shot high and deep into left center field. Going back for the ball, Giambi makes the catch. Tagging both runners, scoring McLemore, and safely into second is Rodriguez, and it is 2-1 for Texas.
Well, good job by both. They got the ball in, but Gonzalez was looking for it in, I guarantee you, and he almost hits this ball out of the ballpark. See, they want it in, and it is in. He doesn't get all of it. If that ball's out over the plate where he can extend his arms, he probably would have hit it over everything. But he gets it deep enough to get the runner in from third and move the runner from first up to second base. Look at him. He's saying, man, I just missed that. That was the pitch I was looking for. And he was looking for it inside. I think you can't just throw every pitch inside to good hitters. You have to miss inside and then go away. You can't just throw every pitch inside. And every pitch they've thrown him, the first 2 at-bats have been inside.
Bob Cluck, the pitching coach, now out to the mound. Now, Joe, forgive me here, my ignorance, but suffer me here for a moment.
Okay.
I mean, I'm picking up on your point now. He's looking for that fastball in.
Right.
Which means usually the guy wants to be quick on it.
Right.
Was he so quick there that he actually ended up hitting it off the end of the bat?
No, I think really what happened, he just missed it. I don't think he wasn't trying to pull it down the line. He was just trying to make sure he got out in front. I think he just missed it. He got under it quite a bit. Clark
back to the dugout. Here's Clark. That's a pretty good theory I had, though, I thought.
Yeah, no, it is a good theory. It happens a lot of times. That just didn't happen in this case.
In this case, all
But
right.
a lot of times you will. No, you're right. I mean, a guy will try to get the barrel around, and he'll hit it off the end of the bat.
I mean, let's say you get sick tomorrow, and I have to work.
You have to be an analyst, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
you know.
I got you.
And they go inside to Clark, and he jumps back out of the way. 2 balls and no strikes.
And actually, you know, in case you're sick, I've been working on my Vin Scully, too. You know.
Let me hear it.
No, I'm saving it. I'm going to throw it on him when you're not here.
Joe Morgan for Vin Scully from the Coliseum. That is pretty good, Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard better, though. 2-0 the count to Will Clark. A changeup on the outside.
Well, with first base open, and even though Lee Stevens is a pretty good hitter coming up, you're definitely going to make the pitch that you want against Will Clark. You're not going to throw him a fastball down the middle 2-0. So he got the outside edge with a 2-0 change, and Will Clark, being a smart hitter, let it go.
2-1 the count to Will. And he chases that one, another changeup.
Will Clark has not hit well, as you mentioned, with runners in scoring position. He's hitting .242 with runners in scoring position, even though he's hitting .343 for the season. And that's unusual. The Will Clark that played for the Giants and had all those great years was a great RBI man, you know, with runners in scoring position.
Too far inside. Clark last year only played 117 games, still drove in 72 runs, drove in 92 the year before in 123 games.
Well, he's always been an RBI man, John, simply because he puts the ball in play. And with a runner at second base, he's not trying to hit the ball out of the ballpark. He's trying to get a base hit, which is what you're supposed to do. And that was a great pitch there by Carsey. 2 change-ups away and then tried to drill the inside corner with a fastball.
And he ends up walking him. 2 men on, 2 men out. Second walk of the inning by Carsey. 2-1 Texas. And these great overhead views of the Oakland Coliseum during tonight's ball game being provided by the Miller Eagle. The Miller Eagle is the first airplane designed to provide aerial shots like these for sports television. The pilot up there is Mark Bulano. Here's Lee Stevens. And there's ball 1 to Lee Stevens. Stevens singled in the second inning.
Yeah, watching Carsey pitch, it's hard to get a reading on a pattern that he has or what he really feels like his best pitch is in certain situations.
Maybe he's still trying to find that out for himself.
Yeah, but I think, John, what you have to do if you're going to be a major league pitcher, you have to decide what your best pitch is. And then in certain situations, you have to go to that pitch. Even if they get a base hit on you or if they do something with it, you have to know what you want to do or have a pattern to get certain hitters out. And I see him throwing changeups at certain times and fastballs at opposite times.
Well, that fastball lifted foul and out of play off to the left.
And my point is he has a good enough fastball that all he has to do is locate it. If he says my fastball is my best pitch, I'm going to locate it, move it in, move it out, and whatever, and mix in a changeup every once in a while. But you have to know what your best pitch is, and you have to have confidence in that pitch. I mean, I watch the best pitchers in the major leagues, and they know what their best pitch is. They know what they're going to do.
2 on, 2 out. Stevens with a little pop fly. Giambi. And that is the inning. And all things considered, although he threw 28 pitches in the inning, he got out of it very inexpensively. Just 1 run scoring. 2-1 Texas. John Miller and Joe Morgan in Oakland, 2-1 Texas. The Athletics run scoring on Mark McGuire's home run against that man, Ken Hill, in the second inning.
John, I'm going to show you how the sluggers take advantage of mistakes by pitchers. Now, watch. This is where Pudge Rodriguez has his glove. He wants it from there out. But what he's going to do is get it from on the inside part of the plate, and McGuire takes advantage of it. That's how sluggers take advantage of pitchers' mistakes. Singles hitters would have probably just slapped that someplace. But the sluggers, when you make a mistake against them, especially middle of the plate in, they will hit the ball out of the ballpark.
Well, that's 29 for McGuire now, which equals Ken Griffey for the major league lead. Griffey did not hit a home run today for the Seattle Mariners, who, by the way, won their ball game, making this one a very important ball game for Texas. They're already 7 games out. I mean, the Rangers went from being 1 game out to being 8 games out in about a week's time.
Well, of course, they were swept by the Mariners in Texas.
There is Cedeno throwing out Brocious, who has been in a slump all year long. And there is 1 man gone in the Oakland third. Stay tuned for a very special Sports Center after the ball game. Keith Olbermann makes his final appearance on ESPN. Keith will be leaving ESPN to pursue other opportunities. He will pair up one last time with Dan Patrick to bring you all of the day's top stories in their big show, their tag team match. Stay tuned. Keith Olbermann makes his swan song on Sports Center after the game. Brent Maine is the hitter. And that's a foul and out of play. Gee, I hadn't heard, Joe. Had that been in the papers?
Well, John, you mentioned that Scott Brocious has been in a slump all year. He's actually been in a slump since the second half of last year. He struggled the second half last year, and he's really struggled all of this year.
Brocious had a very fine overall season last year, hitting .304. But after the All-Star break, his average fell some 40 points from his first half average. You see, he'd made a steady climb, and then all of a sudden this year, he's gotten into a slump, and he just can't get himself out. He finished up last September hitting only .213. And there's a pitch too high to Brent Maine. Cannon Hill walks the 9th place hitter. Another guy not likely to hit a home run against him. Now Jason McDonald, the leadoff man, will come up. McDonald thrown out trying to steal in the first inning by Ivan Rodriguez. This guy 2 years ago led all of minor league baseball with 70 stolen bases. Last year in AAA, he stole 33 times. Buck takes outside for ball 1. He comes from Northern California. He went to Elk Grove High School, Joe. See if that rings a bell.
Yeah, Bill Cartwright.
Well, that's very good.
Yeah. One of my favorite NBA players, a good friend of mine. Real nice guy.
You know, Bill Cartwright, I used to broadcast his games when he was in college here at the University of San Francisco. Yeah. And his favorite sport as a kid was baseball. I mean, he loved Willie Mays. He loved you. And he played shortstop.
A lot of range there, huh?
But it's just when you get to be 7 feet 1 inches tall, it's tough to still be playing shortstop.
Well, when you get 7'1", it's kind of like basketball or nothing, or a desk, or become an executive or something.
Although, watching Randy Johnson, maybe he should have, learned how to pitch. That's a called strike on the outside to McDonald. 2 balls and a strike with Maine at first base.
I'm watching Pudge Rodriguez behind the plate, and to be honest with you, he reminds me so much of Johnny Bench. I mean, he's just quick behind the plate. He's got lively feet, very quick feet. I think that's what separates, the good catchers, the great throwing catchers from other people. They get their feet set so quickly, and they get rid of the ball so quickly. But they're just great behind the plate. Look, I mean, they're always on their toes.
To the outside, but it missed. And it is 3-1. Well, Hill, having walked Maine, now he's 3-1 to Jason McDonald. Pitching these guys so very carefully, Joe.
Well, the one thing I'm also noticing about Kenny Hill, John, is every once in a while he looks like he's throwing darts out there. He's aiming the ball rather than just throwing it. And I mean, that happens, sometimes, especially when you've been injured. You want to, make sure you throw strikes.
Well, that was pretty close, and it missed. And he has walked 2 consecutive hitters. One hitting .210, the other hitting in the 230s.
Well, he does release this ball. So he releases that one really well. He just missed with it. He didn't aim that pitch.
So now the better Oakland hitters are coming up now. Rafael Borrego with Maine at second base and McDonald at first base.
And quickly, what I mean by aiming the pitch is you slow your arm speed down trying to get it to a certain spot.
He was showing bunt and took very high and inside for ball one. I take it, Joe, he must have been faking on that bunt. I mean, 1 out, 2 men on. Dick Bosman, the pitching coach, I talked to Kenny Hill, can't get the ball over all of a sudden.
Well, I think he's probably noticed something in Kenny's motion. I'm noticing that every once in a while he's aiming it, but Dick Bosman sees him every day. He probably has noticed that or something else, and he's out there explaining it to him, you know, what he wants him to do. I really believe he's just aiming the ball. I mean, that pitch was definitely an aim. And when you start to do that, you can't throw strikes. You just got to look at the target and release it to the target.
Dick Bosman, who once threw a no-hitter against the Oakland Athletics in Cleveland back in 1974 when Oakland was on its way to its 3rd consecutive World Championship as the first no-hitter, Joe, I ever broadcast. Remember?
I've never broadcast one, but I've been involved in a few.
Yeah, you broadcast a no-hitter.
When?
Terry Mulholland. Broadcast, you don't even remember it.
No, not me. I did? I don't think so. I don't think so. I've been on the short end of some.
I watched you broadcast it on the big screen in Seattle one night. You were back in Philly or someplace.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, maybe you're right.
No-hitter, one-hitter.
Yeah, no-hitter, one-hitter.
All the same to me. All these compliments for you that night, too. There's a swing and a high pop foul. There's all that foul territory here. And Clark thought that Maine was going to be taking liberties. He immediately fired the ball over to Domingo Cedeno toward third base. Maine holding his ground.
John, now I remember. You're right.
Too late.
I remember now. We're in Philly. You're right.
No, that wasn't you.
Yes, it was, because I did not talk about the no-hitter. I remember the last inning. I just let it. I didn't even say anything. I just watched.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I remember now. That's why I forgot. I didn't say anything.
You mean you never said anything? No.
That inning, I just said 1 out.
That's right. Well, that's right. It was excellent.
Yeah, 2 outs.
You never spoke.
Yeah, which is the best sometimes.
Matt Stairs. Well, I'm glad to help you remember one of your great moments in broadcasting there, Joe, since you forgot it. Here's Matt Stairs.
Now it's all coming to me. In fact, the last out of that ball game was a hard line drive to third base. I remember.
We don't even care about it anymore.
Oh, okay.
The moment is past.
But it's coming back to me.
Yeah. Well, send me a letter. Matt Stairs from St. John, New Brunswick, up in the Maritime provinces. Now, they cannot play a whole lot of baseball up in the Maritimes. I mean, the weather would not permit you to be outdoors enough to get a long season, but he played in the Olympics for the Canadian team in the Seoul, Korea Olympic Games.
And he has
1988.
He has been a really good pinch hitter and spot starter for the A's this year.
And he's hitting the ball extremely well. Well, he's off the end of the bat with that off-speed delivery. 2-1 the count. He came into this game hitting .365 in 115 at-bats. He's got 11 home runs. He's averaged a home run for every 10.5 at-bats, which is almost Mark McGwire type. What's Johnny Oates came out of the dugout there.
Well,
talking to the umpires.
Well, Ron is out of the coach's box, but I mean, I don't know. He's kind of circling around like get back in the coach's box, but I don't know what that means.
Ron Washington, the third base coach. 2 balls and a strike. In the dirt. Now on deck is Mark McGwire. 3-1 the count. There's McGwire. So if there's ever anything to the idea that having a big hitter behind you gets you more pitches to hit, we would find out right here.
Yeah, well, I don't think there's any doubt he's going to have to come after him with a fastball, so that will give him a pitch to hit.
Payne at second, McDonald at first, 2 down. 2-1 Texas leader. 3-1 the count. And he walked it. And he has walked the bases loaded for Mark McGwire. McGwire has already hit a grand slam in this series. Thursday night, his 9th career grand slam, tying the A's all-time franchise record. And I mean, going back to their days in Kansas City, their days in Philadelphia. He tied a record that has been jointly held by himself and Jimmy Fox, one of the great sluggers in the history of the game. McGuire homered his first time tonight. The slider, and he tapped it ever so slowly. Hill will go home with it. Rodriguez covering, and Maine is retired. Kind of a letdown on that one, Joe. 2-1 Texas after 3. It's the top of the 4th inning now for Oakland. Texas 2 and the Athletics 1. Dean Palmer, the hitter, against Steve Carsey. First ball swinging. Pops it up. McGuire takes it, and just like that, Palmer is 0 for 2.
When you're on base and you're going to try to steal a base against Ivan Rodriguez, you better get the best jump you can get. Now, watch here. His leg's already here. He should be out here. He did not get a great jump. And that's a perfect throw by Rodriguez. I mean, he made up some of the ground by running well. He did not get a great jump, but just a great throw by Rodriguez.
And a called strike to Domingo Cedeno. Well, we're talking about base stealing here. And my partner, Joe Morgan, stole 689 bases during his career.
None off Rodriguez, though. But I tell you what, if I was going to steal a base off of him, I'd make sure I got the greatest jump I could get. I'd get a little better than normal when he was behind the plate. And that's what you have to do as a base stealer. When you have the great throwers behind the plate, like Rodriguez, like Bench, like the players, you know, who play, you have to get, you just make sure you get another step or two and make sure you get a better jump. And put pressure on them, not on yourself.
It's a base hit to center field by Cedeno. Right back through the middle against Carsey. That is the 5th hit for the Texas Rangers. And Damon Buford will come up. Now, Joe, I know you're a big proponent of the crossover step.
Right, exactly.
Not lifting your front foot.
Right.
Now, John Madden, I was on a show with him one morning. We had been talking about that. He said that he tried that at his home, put on his baseball spikes, and he said he kept twisting his right ankle every time he tried this crossover step. And he was real concerned about this.
Well, you have to, truthfully, you have to turn your right foot a little bit toward second base, just a little bit.
So a little pivot.
Like a 45-degree angle.
So you don't lift the foot up and do that?
No, you just pivot on it, just twist on it.
Okay, you twist it.
Yeah.
Without twisting your ankle?
Yes.
Okay.
Preferably.
All right. I was thinking maybe having you and Madden meet sometime. And high fly ball down the left field line. Stairs into foul ground. Just enough room for him to catch that one before going out of play. Tagging was Cedeno, bluffing towards second base. I said Stairs. That's Jason Giambi. I beg your pardon. Jason Giambi in left field. 2 down.
Let's look at the crossover step here. Now, he should keep this foot stationary and just turn with the left. Well, he just sliding. He's not going anyplace. He's not trying to steal a base, so it's not going to. He didn't do anything. He's just doing a slide step. He's doing a slide step because he's not trying to steal. He's just moving up on the pitch.
Yeah, the way Madden was putting it to me, Joe, just the mere fact of the way you had talked about it, he might need surgery and stuff on his ankle. Sounded like he had a very serious injury trying that out. 1 strike to Mark McLemore, and he's been the quintessential leadoff man tonight. He's been exactly what Texas has not been getting most of the year. McLemore's been on base twice. He's stolen a base, and he has scored each time he's reached. He's been the man getting things started for Texas. Now he bats with 2 down and Cedeno at first. There he goes. The throw down. And he beat the throw.
And that's 17 out of 18 against Carsey. Let's take a look at what we're talking about, the crossover step that maybe John Madden can learn from this one, John. Now, this foot should stay stationary. This foot just crosses over. And he does a good job there. That's a great jump right there. He kept that foot stationary, and see, watch what happens. See, there's the results. He's safe at first and second base. And it may seem like, well, he made it easily. But if you move your right foot first, you're actually running in place, and that gives you know, that's like a split second. Takes you a second longer to get to second base.
That's good. I mean, we haven't seen too many guys who actually employ that.
Yeah, that was very good technique.
So Cedeno, with his first steal of the year, it's only the second time he's tried.
But he still doesn't get a 10 now. He gets a 9 because he straightened up a little too quick. He's got to stay down a little longer in a sprinter's, you know, run like a sprinter.
Well, you know that, I mean, the guy that did it back in April, when we had the old films seeing him steal a base, Jackie Robinson.
Yeah, you're right.
And he had the little pivot with the foot, the crossover step.
And he stayed down. Well, he was a sprinter anyway. And Maury Wills was like that. If you come up too quickly, obviously, you know, if you watch guys run the 100-yard dash, when they come out of the blocks, they don't come up immediately. They stay down because you can drive harder from down there. And that's what you have to do as a base stealer as well, because it's a 30-yard sprint.
1 ball and 2 strikes to McLemore.
Well, a little less than that because you have a lead at first, but it's a sprint, and that's what you're trying to do.
1-2 to McLemore. Ivan Rodriguez would be next, with Cedeno stealing second. Now McLemore with a chance to pick up an RBI here. 2-1 Texas. 2-2. Steve Carson a little upset with himself. They're shaking his head after throwing that pitch. Missing badly with it. Carson has thrown 68 pitches in this ball game now. They've got him on a 90-pitch limit. Juan Gonzalez driven in both of the Texas runs up till now. Curveball, base hit. That's 2 curveballs they've thrown to McLemore that have cost them each time. This one he knocks home Cedeno on a curveball. In the 3rd inning, it was a 3-2 curveball for ball 4 that put him on base, from whence he eventually scored.
And John, if you're a hitter, you can see him slow his motion down to throw the curveball. I could see it from here. He slows his motion down right at the top, and he slows his arm speed down, and you can see that it's going to be a breaking ball, a curveball, if you're in the batter's box. So you have to keep the arm speed going if you're going to snap off the curveball. But he slowed his body down and slowed his arm speed down, and you could see it was going to be a curveball that probably just rolled a little bit. It wasn't a real sharp curveball.
Well, McLemore's having quite a game tonight. Scored 2, driven home 1. And has given the Rangers precisely what they've needed in each one of his at-bats. Getting on base as a leadoff man twice and scoring, and this time getting the clutch 2-out RBI as Ivan Rodriguez peels one foul off to the right. Rodriguez is 1 for 2. 3-1 now for Texas. Rodriguez is hitting .354. Now, I know, Joe, one of the fun aspects of the interleague play was players in the other league getting a chance to see the stars that they don't get to see often. And this guy provoked a lot of comment when the National League teams faced Texas, because they'd wondered if all of the stories they'd heard were just so much hot air, or if there really was truth to it. And I think the National League, at least the 3 teams that have faced Texas so far, came away very, very impressed with Rodriguez. More impressed than what they'd heard. That is up the middle. There's Bornegal for the force out on McLemore in second. 3-1 now for Texas, and Jose Canseco coming up for Oakland. We'll be back. The ESPN Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week. From the Oakland Coliseum, John Miller and Joe Morgan, your Sunday night telecasters. There's the view from inside the Coliseum. The sunshine, by the way, has gone away. The clouds have come rolling in through the Golden Gate, across the bay, and into Oakland, heading out for the Oakland Hills now, as Jose Canseco leads it off for the Athletics. Now, Hill got Mark McGuire to ground out ever so softly on a bases-loaded slider. Canseco drives one deep down the right field line. This one is into the corner, and it bounces up against the wall. Gonzalez over to pick it up, and Canseco has a stand-up double. Canseco going the opposite way there.
Yeah, he hasn't hit much for an average at 235 starting tonight. But the one thing that he's always been able to do is hit the ball the other way. I mean, he hits the ball down. They were planting well around toward left field. I mean, just this ball hits right and bounces against the fence. I mean, but they were playing him. I think they're shifting too far around to the left on him because he's not strictly a pull hitter.
So Canseco with the double. Juan Gonzalez had to go a long way to go retrieve that one. Now, here is Jason Giambi. That's a foul.
Well, Giambi, you can see him make a conscious effort there to pull the ball to the right side, which is what he's supposed to do. And he wasn't able to get it on the ground, but at least he was trying to get the job done.
Giambi hitting .311 for the year right up till now. 3-1 for Texas. The Rangers have not been doing it with their slugging, with the big home runs. They've been doing it with timely hitting, some aggressive base running, a couple of steals have led to their runs. Ball in the dirt from Hill. 1 ball, 1 strike. And John, had two out RBI singles.
And that's basically the way they played last year. Obviously, they mixed in a lot of long balls, but that's just extra. But what they did last year is they manufactured runs. They would hit and run. They would do things like they get base hits in the clutch, and that's what you need.
Well, that's how you win the tight ball games.
Exactly.
You don't always hit the 3-run homers and score 8 to 10 runs. And that's too low, too low. In fact, mentioning that, one of the big problems for the Rangers has been in the tight ball games this year. Games decided by 1 run. They've won 6 and lost 16. And that's terrible. That's the worst.
And there's a reason that you continue to lose 1-run ball games. It means that fundamentally you're not doing things correctly, moving runners along, and then picking them up with the sacrifice fly.
Up the middle. Off. That hit the runner. When it already hit Hill,
the ball's in play.
So the ball is in play because it hit Hill first.
Yes. Canseco, the ball hit him, but Canseco thinks that he's out, but it's actually just a dead ball. Canseco was about to walk off of the bag, and they would have had a chance to tag him, but it's really just a dead ball. Once a fielder has a chance to catch the ball, then you're okay. See, now the ball goes off the heel and it hits Canseco. Now watch Canseco. See, he kind of stops, but there's no one near him to grab the ball and tag him out, except Palmer. He charges it, trying to get the runner at first, but if they would have tagged Canseco, he would have been out. He actually rounded the bag and about to walk off. And remember, Garrett Anderson hit a ball off a heel shin, which, you know, hurt him in his last start.
He got a very deep bruise. The line drive in his last start off his left shin. The bruise was bad enough that they took him for x-rays. Took him right out of the ball game. So Oakland with a great threat now. Runners at first and third, nobody out. And here is Scott Spezio. Flight out to center his first time. Right center, tagging at third, Canseco. Gonzalez with the catch. Throws toward the plate. And nobody's there. And Hill was not backing up the plate. Gonzalez overthrew his cutoff man, Will Clark. And actually the ball went to Ken Hill.
Well, actually, it's everybody's fault there that's at home plate. It's Ken Hill's and also Rodriguez. Someone should have yelled for Will Clark to cut that ball. But Will did a decoy on the runner at first base to keep him from moving up. Now watch this play. Now Gonzalez comes up and fires toward the plate. Now watch, they did not tell Will Clark to cut the ball. See right there, he decoys to hold the runner at first. And Hill and someone else should have said cut the ball, him or Rodriguez. Neither one of them did. Hill wasn't backing up the play, and the ball moves up. They should not give the error to the right fielder. That error should be on Hill.
But they have given it to Gonzalez. It will be scored as a sacrifice fly and an RBI for Spezio. And they have given Gonzalez the error.
Well, Gonzalez hit the cutoff man, which is his job. So it's up to the infielders to make the play after that. He threw the ball low enough for them to cut it off, and they didn't cut it off. He's supposed to hit the cutoff man. He did his job.
And really, I mean, Hill knocked the ball away from anybody catching the ball. He should have been back behind Rodriguez. He shouldn't have been there even close to that ball.
But truthfully, like I said, they should have told Will Clark to cut the ball. And Will Clark did his job. He decoyed to hold the runner at first.
So it is 3-2, and we mentioned that Texas has not played as fundamentally well. Their defense has not been as strong this year. And we've seen an example. That's the 63rd error for the Rangers this year. 12 more than their opponents have committed. Now, because they gave Giambi second base, Brocious has a chance to drive in the tying run. 1 ball and 2 strikes. Texas is down near the bottom. 11th in the American League in fielding for the season. Although 2 of the teams behind them are doing very well in the standings. The Seattle Mariners behind them, and also the Chicago White Sox, moved to within 1 game of Cleveland in the American League Central. Although they're just 2 games over 500. 2-2 now to Brocious. He grinded a short his first time. 1 man gone here in the 4th inning. Could be a very big error indeed here. Brocious knocks in Giambi. If Giambi is still at first, they have a chance to get the double play and end the inning. He would not score on a single to the outfield. It's a real sloppy play there by the Rangers, and as you say, more than 1 person involved in it.
Right. Well, if you're going to give an error to someone, I think you have to give it to Kenny Hill. Because if Hill catches the ball, then Giambi would not have been able to move up. But first of all, he should have been backing up the plate. That's where he should have been.
They made only 87 errors all of last year. 63 in less than half a year so far this year. And down on strikes is Brocious on the high hard one.
Let's take another look at that play. Now watch Gonzalez. Now when he catches the ball, he looks for the cutoff man. He finds Will Clark. Now he throws the ball low enough. Now look, Will Clark could have cut that ball off right there. They let it go, and look, I mean, Kenny Hill should have been back here. And then Rodriguez would have gone out and gotten the ball. But he saw Kenny Hill there, so he let Kenny take it. So if anybody gets the error, it should have been Kenny Hill.
Well, it ends up that it will not cost them as Brent Maine hits a comebacker. Kenny Hill got himself out of jams. 5th inning, Greer, Gonzalez, and Clark. 3-2, Texas. Sunday Night Baseball from Oakland continues now as we move to the top of the 5th inning. 3-2, the Rangers are leading. Juan Gonzalez a little disgusted after the way things went bad on that 1 play. This is when he came back into the dugout.
Well, he's upset because, I mean, he says, I did my job, but I'm the one that gets the error. You know what I mean? He says, I'm supposed to find the cutoff man, throw it to the cutoff man, and that's what I did.
Rusty Greer, the hitter. And I think that brings up an interesting point, too, because Gonzalez has been criticized for not being a very good outfielder. And he feels that he's worked hard at that aspect of his game. So it's disappointing to get an error when you feel like you did your job.
Well, he's right. I mean, like you say, when you work hard to improve yourself defensively, you hate for things like that to happen. You get the error when someone else is, you know, there was lack of communication is what happened. But again, Kenny Hill should have been behind the plate.
Juan Gonzalez is out on deck. Rusty Greer, the hitter. The big guns are coming up for Texas here. Greer, Gonzalez, and Will Clark against Steve Carsey. 2-1 the count. That is hit deep. Going back is Giambi, still going back. This one is gone. A home run. Above the scoreboard out there, the 16-foot high wall, which the scoreboard is part of, and Rusty Greer with his 11th home run of the year going to the opposite field.
I was talking, you know, to Will Clark before the ball game, and he said left-handed hitters that hit the ball to the left of that 362, they could really drive the ball out of here. He said really carried well when you hit it to the opposite field. Take a look. It's supposed to be down, but that pitch is up. And Rusty Greer hits it hard to left field, and that's where the ball really carries well. You know, according to Will Clark, you can see that ball just jumped out of here.
Now, with a home run already on the board, here is Gonzalez. And a curveball spins in there for a strike. Gonzalez singled home a run his first time, and then hit a sacrifice fly his second time. And something is loose out on the field in shallow left field, so Giambi comes in to pick it up and throw it off the field. And that's the reason for the delay. That home run only measured at 370 feet.
Only? It's a home run. See, these guys, McGuire, these guys are spoiled, everyone.
And Gonzalez lifts a fly ball to center. And it's caught out there by McDonald. Gonzalez retired. Let's go now for an update with Bill Pito.
All right, John, MCI takes us to Seattle. The Angels and Mariners tied at 2 in the bottom of the 9th inning. Jose Cruz Jr., the base is empty. Way back in right, his 6th homer of the year, wins the game for Seattle. 3-2 over the Angels.
All right, Bill. And Jose Cruz Jr. got a pretty good start. Here after starting the year in the minor leagues. Will Clark takes one too low for ball 1. Clark is grounded out and walked. 4-2. Texas is on top of the 5th inning. The sun is shining again here at the Coliseum, as you can tell. Right to the shortstop, Bornegal. Dropped to his right knee to get in front of it. And throws out Clark. Out number 2. Well, coming up, the big Wednesday night baseball doubleheader on ESPN, starting at 7:30 Eastern. The Colorado Rockies, second place in the National League West, will meet Juan Gonzalez and the Texas Rangers interleague play at the ballpark in Arlington. Larry Walker hit his 24th homer today, and he's hitting .410 for the year. And, of course, Juan Gonzalez, the American League MVP. That's at 7:30, 4:30 Pacific, the first half of the Wednesday night baseball doubleheader. Off the third base side, Brocious. There's all that foul territory. And Lee Stevens is the final out of the inning. We'll tell you about that second half of the doubleheader, which will feature guys like Tony Gwynn and Ken Griffey Jr. in the same game. Right now, the top of the order for Oakland coming. 4-2 Texas. That is the Oakland Coliseum. An aerial view of same. Texas, down there on the ground, is leading 4-2 over the Oakland Athletics as Oakland comes to bat for the top of its order in the last of the 5th inning. Here's the look inside the Coliseum. Ken Hill misses too high for ball 1 to Jason McDonald. Now McDonald, the young prospect for the Athletics, has singled in this game, but was then thrown out trying to steal by Rodriguez, and he is walked. And that's a foul out of play. 1 ball and 1 strike. By the way, I don't ordinarily mention this during a broadcast, but I'm making a special exception tonight. I'll tell you what I'm saying in just a moment here. Joe's very excited about this as well. 1 ball, 1 strike to Jason McDonald. Rafael Bornegal is on deck. Too high. Here in Oakland, they have what they call the dot race. So it's on the scoreboard, right? There's different dots, and there's a red one and a blue one and a white one or whatever. So you can distinguish between the dots because it's a race, like a horse race, you know, or like a, you know, a track meet or whatever. It's a slow tap. Ken Hill throws him out, and McDonald retired for the first time. 1 man gone, and Bornegal coming up. Anyway, they called today's dot race the Keith Olbermann Memorial Stakes in honor of his final telecast on SportsCenter tonight. And the dots were named for you, Joe, and for Peter Gammons, and for me. And I won, or my dot won anyway. It was a very exciting race, I thought. Here's a fastball in there for a strike. But, Joe, I know it maybe wasn't as exciting for you, but you beat Peter Gammons by plenty. You were way ahead of Gammons. Bornegal is 0 for 2, and that's a foul.
You know what? At the fight last night, they were yelling fix, too.
Well, fortunately, both of your ears seem to be in very good shape, even though you had the defeat in the dot race. 1 out, nobody on. Slider. Strike 3 called. Larry Barnett rang him up with a flourish that time. In the Oakland bullpen, Carlos Reyes, a right-hander, is warming up. Steve Carsey has thrown 79 pitches in the first 5 innings. They have him on a limit. They don't want him to throw more than 90 pitches in an outing right now. Something that trainer Barry Weinberg picked up and relayed to manager Art Howe. Right there. Matt Stairs, the hitter. Big cut and a miss. It's 0-1. He is back to the pitcher in a check swing, and he is walked 0 for 1.
John, last week we were talking about, you know, a bloop and a blast to get a team back in the game. And Willie McCovey, a friend of mine, was telling me that that actually originated in Pittsburgh. The gunner, Bob Prince.
Well, there's the blue. And now McGuire comes up to try and provide the blast. Meanwhile, on the first pitch he saw in the second inning, McGuire already hit a blast.
Well, that was the blast. The fastball belt high, and he hit it high and deep to left field. Now, wait a minute. You said Rusty Greer's was only 370. How far was that one?
Well, that was just a little over 370, but it was 18 miles high.
Yeah, but his went, I bet you his didn't go 370. Now, you're always on the little guys.
But his was majestic. It was very aesthetically pleasing. A slider. Now, he got him on a first pitch slider with the bases loaded in the third inning. McGuire, the last 3 seasons, and he's played a lot fewer games than those other sluggers, such as Albert Bell, Jay Buhner, Vaughn on that list. Strike call. 1 ball, 1 strike.
Well, he threw him a fastball. He hit it over the left field wall. Now he's thrown him 3 consecutive sliders. He threw him 1 slider to get out of the bases loaded jam. He's thrown him 2 sliders here in his third at bat.
Now, often, though, they say with McGuire, you throw him a slider, it's a high-risk pitch. A check swing. Cedeno charges hard and throws him out. Well, in this case, rather than a bloop and a blast, it was a bloop and a check swing that did the A's no good. 4-2 Texas. Yeah, Joe, you see the way that one guy wears his cap?
Yes.
That means he's a big fan of yours.
Why is that?
I don't know. It's very common, though. Whenever I see someone with a cap like that, I say, oh, loves Joe Morgan. Carlos Reyes in relief for the Athletics of Steve Carsey. Went 5 innings. Reyes will face the bottom part of the batting order for Texas. It will be Palmer, Cedeno, and Buford. Carsey went 5 innings, allowed 4 runs and 7 hits. Dean Palmer, the hitter. And that changeup kind of floated through there for a called strike. Dean Palmer struck out looking in the second, popped to first in the fourth. Breaking ball hit off the end of the bat, and it's a base hit, a bloop into center field. Palmer's hit apparently more bloops this year than blasts. Only 7 big flies. Now, coming up Thursday, up-close primetime special with Roy Firestone. One-on-one conversations with all 11 living members of the 500 Home Run Club. Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, Frank Robinson, Harmon Killebrew, Red G. Jackson, Mike Schmidt, Ted Williams, Willie McCovey, Eddie Matthews, Ernie Banks, and Eddie Murray. That's Thursday, 9:30 Eastern. All 11 for one-on-one with Roy. Cedeno, slow roller. And that moves the runner up. Dean Palmer over to second. A bloop and a dribblers. And the Rangers have a man at second base. They've been playing little ball very well here tonight.
You remember Bob Prince, don't you? They call
The Gunner.
him the Gunner, yeah.
The Hall of Fame broadcaster.
Yeah, the Gunner. Pittsburgh. I'm sure there were a lot of people in Pittsburgh when I was talking about I heard that from Milton May were saying, yeah, but he heard it from Bob Prince, so we give him credit. Loop and a blast.
Here's Damon Buford. Third ball for a called strike. Buford has hit a comebacker, and he is fouled out to the left fielder, Giambi. 4-2 Texas leading. Bob Prince, one of the most colorful and popular baseball broadcasters of all time. Called like a Brooks Robinson. Caught everything at third base. Called him the Hoover. You know, like, because he was he vacuumed up he cleaned up everything. 1 ball, 1 strike. I mean, but he said it without explaining it.
Were you explaining that to me or to the fans?
I was talking to you.
Oh, okay. I know what Hoover is.
Okay.
My mom had one.
Is that right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, then she would have loved Bob Prince, too. In fact, when they ended up firing Bob Prince, I mean, Pittsburgh, that was, a revolution had started. There's a one-hopper to third. Brocious looks Palmer back and throws out Buford on number 2. We're at the Oakland Coliseum, and there's the panoramic view. That's Lake Merritt in the foreground, and the northern section of the San Francisco Bay off in the distance. And that view is from the Miller Brewing Eagle. The Eagle is a unique twin-engine airplane that Miller Brewing is using to provide fans exciting new aerial views on sports television. We're glad to have them with us tonight on Sunday Night Baseball. Well, Mark McLemore, who's been a one-man gang out there tonight, he has gotten himself into scoring position twice and has been brought home to score. And in the fourth inning, in the same kind of a situation, he delivered a run with a clutch two-out single. He's got Palmer at second base here, trying to do the same. Reyes misses low, ball 2. McLemore, well-traveled professional, and has been with Johnny Oates for a while. He got a chance to do a lot of playing for Johnny in Baltimore when Oates was the manager there. Next, a called strike in the outside corner. In fact, one year, 1993, they thought he was going to be a utility man off the bench and a career-long second baseman. He ended up being their regular right fielder, and he did a great job in right field. 2 down, Palmer at second. And it's 3-1 to McLemore. Now, the man on deck is hitting over 350. Ivan Rodriguez, although he's a right-handed hitter. This is the kind of spot the Rangers have done well with in this game tonight. Well, I guess that's the ultimate compliment, Joe. They walked him. They're scared of him. Second time he's walked, and he's been on base 4 straight times. He's giving Art Howe a headache, I think. You walk McLemore heading in the 220s. Now you got to face Rodriguez with 2 men on. Third in the majors in hits, leading the American League. The only 2 guys ahead of him in all of Major League Baseball are both guys who are flirting with 400 batting averages. Walker is hitting 400, 410 to be exact. Gwynn started the day hitting 393. Rodriguez hitting 353. 2 on, 2 out. Up and in for ball 1. I think the thing with Rodriguez, Joe, I mean, it's amazing enough that he's got that many hits in half a season. But even beyond that is that as a catcher, he's played often enough to even have a chance to get that many hits. 1 ball, 1 strike.
Well, he's definitely durable, obviously. And he's just a great catcher. You have to wonder, though, I guess he's 25 years old. You have to wonder how many more years he can catch in 140-plus games in that heat in Texas.
He's got a piece of it. Foul ball, 1 ball and 2 strikes. Well, Texas used to have a very fine catcher back in the 70s, Jim Sundberg.
Yeah.
And like Rodriguez, a very strong arm. He had one year where he threw out more than 50% of all who tried to steal against him. He won the Gold Glove year after year, but he played so much that it seemed to take a toll on him.
Yeah, no doubt.
Johnny Oates knows about that. He's a long-time catcher. That is caught at third by Brocious. Hit hard by Rodriguez, but right to Brocious. 2 men left. This time the Rangers do not get that big 2-out clutch hit. Jose Canseco will be coming up for Oakland. Texas 4, Oakland 2.
Bill Pito back in the studio with our Home Depot Rising Stars. Bottom 8 against Minnesota. Watch White Sox rookie Mike Cameron. He goes back and makes a spectacular grab to rob Roberto Kelly. So good, we got to show it to you again. Chicago wins 6-4. They've now won 10 of their last 12 games. John, back to you in Oakland.
All right, Bill. And hey, that was in that ballpark. That was a Kirby Puckett special, wasn't it? I mean, Kirby made those catches. It seemed like almost every game he robbed somebody of a home run. Here from the Oakland Coliseum, Sunday Night Baseball. The Texas Rangers trying to get themselves headed back in the right direction. The defending champions of the American League West. They need a win to remain 7 games back of Seattle. They lost 9 out of 10. Coming into last night's ball game, they won last night. They're leading tonight. But here's Jose Canseco, and the slider for a strike. Canseco doubled into the right field corner his last time up and scored a run. 1 for 2 in the game. Giambi will follow. Right through the middle, base hit. Canseco, far from trying to pull everything. It went down the right field line and now one right through the middle.
That was an off-speed pitch that was up. Looked like a little slider, but it was up, and just as where Canseco can really hammer it. So you look at that right there, and he just rips it right back through the middle for a base hit. Powerful swing. See how they talk? See the sluggers talking? See, he and Will talking? Will didn't say anything to McDonald. Now he's talking to the sluggers, see?
Here's Jason Giambi. He flied to left his first time and got an infield single in the 4th inning. It actually hit off of the glove of Hill and ricocheted over and hit Canseco in the foot on his way to third base. Giambi, the possible tying run here. He's got some pretty good power. 4-2, Texas leading. Kenny Hill in the shadows. The sun shining again here in the East Bay. Outside, but the hitter's background is lit up in the bright sunshine. Meanwhile, the Texas bullpen, for the first time, is going to get busy. There's Ed Vosberg, a left-hander, warming up. Middle infield double play depth for the Rangers. Canseco at first, Clark on the bag with him. And misses again. 3-0 to Giambi. Spezio is on deck. Spezio, the Oakland prospects, made it to the big leagues this year. Big news this week when they made a trade with the Baltimore Orioles, trading Geronimo Berroa, their sluggers, in exchange for a young pitching prospect, Jimmy Haynes, who's had major league experience. Johnny Oates dispatches Dick Bosman, the pitching coach, out to the mound to visit with Ken Hill, who is in trouble here with 2 men on and nobody out in the 6th inning. He's only thrown 71 pitches.
John, you mentioned the Berroa trade. I was trying to understand that trade personally. Last year, Berroa he hit 36 home runs, drove in 106 runs for the A's. And this year he was off to another good start. He hitting .310. He was on a pace to hit 32 homers and driving another 100 runs. And they traded him. I mean, he was actually doing a better job, hitting better RBI-wise and so forth than Canseco was. And there you see the numbers. I mean, that's the 2-year average, but last year he had 36 home runs and 106 runs batted in and hit .290. And he's a good hitter. He's a good RBI man. I think Baltimore, he's going to help Baltimore.
Jimmy Haynes was leading the International League in strikeouts. He'd been a big disappointment for the Orioles when they opened the season with them last year. Pitched real well in the September of the year before. They'll also, Oakland will get a player to be named later. Spezio bunts the ball, but foul. Berroa 36 home runs last year and 22 the year before. The only 2 full seasons he played with Oakland as a regular.
It's kind of interesting to me. I mean, last year Ernie Young was here also. He had 19 home runs last year and 64 runs batted in. And he's in the minor leagues.
Ernie Young had a very poor spring and then a slow start with the Athletics this year. And with some of the others having a slow start, like Canseco and Brocious, they decided let's try something else. So Ernie Young back in the minors. But Oakland has been in a state of flux with many new players, and they also started Tony Batista was their leadoff man at the start of the season, a young shortstop. He's back in the minors now.
I find it interesting because Ernie Young could run a little bit. I mean, and if you're not hitting, at least you can manufacture runs, so forth, because when you have, Brocious, as you mentioned, hitting 190, and he's got more at-bats than anyone on the ball club.
Spezio has been unable to get the bunt down. 0-2 the count. Get a sacrifice fly to right field as last time. 2 men on, nobody out. He's still looking to bunt. Takes that one low. Ed Vosberg has been up in the bullpen now, number 27, the right-hander. Matt Whiteside is joined him out there. We're in the 6th inning. Johnny Oates does not like the looks of what he's seen from Kenny Hill so far here in the 6th. Canseco single to center. And Giambi walked. Canseco over at second down. Giambi is at first. Hits softly and foul. No bunt attempt there by Spezio. The Athletics have a lot of power. They've hit 105 home runs this year, but next to last in the league in these kinds of situations, getting that base hit with somebody in scoring position, that has been a problem. The only one they got tonight was Giambi's ball that hit off of Kenny Hill. That was their one hit with somebody in scoring position, and it never left the infield. Mark McGwire drove in a run with a home run back in the 2nd. Gets the double play.
Well, McLemore is looking at it because he had a chance to go to second, but I think he made the right play. You just go ahead and make the double play. McLemore, see, smiling because they had a chance to go. He thought around the horn and maybe get a triple play. I don't think it would have happened because, see, he has to run to the bag. But he looks at second, then he decides, no, I better take the sure out at first, which is wise. So they come up with the double play. And we'll take a look. See, now he has time to go to second base. See right there? But he takes the sure out, and that's the way to play it. I think he made the right play.
The main thing was getting the 2 outs, and he did. Now here is Scott Brocious. You don't see that too often, an around-the-horn triple play. You don't see triple plays at all.
Yeah, but that
very often.
You're right, but that one was going to be difficult because it was a left-handed hitter, first of all, and he had to take 2 steps to get to the bag.
Gary Gaetti started around-the-horn triple plays 2 consecutive days at Fenway Park a few years back when he was with the Minnesota Twins. Here's Scott Brocious. The first time I ever saw an around-the-horn triple play, Joe, it was in a movie called The Odd Couple with Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon. Walter Matthau played a sports writer, and he's at Shea Stadium on the phone to Jack Lemmon in the press box. And while he's on the phone with his back turned to the infield, the Pittsburgh Pirates, with Bill Mazeroski playing second base, turned it around the horn triple play. Don't tell me you didn't see that, Joe. What? Of course, that one, they staged it for the movie. Well, but it was the real Pittsburgh Pirates.
I saw Mazeroski make a lot of turns at second base. I didn't see the triple plays, but I saw him make a lot of turns on the double play.
Well, see, now you have to go rent that movie and find out if I'm right. And you will, too. And if you don't find it in there, you'll be calling me like 3 in the morning. That's a foul off to the right and back out of play. 1 ball and 2 strikes to Scott Brocious. I mean, everybody thinks about you as like a baseball guy, but it's the movies that you're really crazy about. You should be like Siskel and Ebert and Morgan. 3 thumbs up if you all like it. 1 ball and 2 strikes. Anyway, I digress. Now back to the game. Brocious trying to get out of this season-long slump. Base hit now could bring home a run. 2-2. He's been behind every time he's been up there tonight.
Well, when you're struggling, that's the case. The pitcher always makes good pitches. He throws strikes. And when you struggle, you sometimes help him by swinging at bad pitches. But it seems like you're always on the defensive end if you're at the plate and you're not swinging the bat well.
Giambi over at second base. 2 down. That's fouled on the right field line. It will go right over the Rangers bullpen. Well, the real bad thing, I guess, if you're Art Howe in this inning, you get the first 2 men on and you want Spezio to bunt, and he can't get it done. And then what's worse, after failing to bunt, he hits the double play ball that might have even been a triple play. Little things here have conspired against the Athletics in this ball game. They're not getting that big hit, getting that bunt down. Brocious fouls that one back. 2-2. And Texas has been doing all those little things so far, with the one error that ended up not costing them.
It's funny you mentioned Art Howe, John, because last year when the A's were overachievers, the writers around here all said, well, Art Howe has the perfect temperament for this ball club, and that's the reason they're winning. This year they're not doing so well, and they said that he doesn't have the right temperament. He's not fiery enough. I find that interesting.
2-2 the count to Brocious. And he reaches for one and fights it off into the crowd. Who said that about him?
Well, some of the writers, I don't want to use their names on the air, but they had written that, you know, he's not fiery enough. He's not pushing him hard enough. He's not, you know, taking names and pushing them, you know. And I know Art Howe. I played with him. He was a teammate of mine. I tell you what, he is a leader. But that's kind of what's going on around here. Last year, he was the perfect guy, had the perfect temperament. This year, they're not doing so well. His temperament's not that good for this ball club.
Brocious hits it sharply but foul. Well, I guess sometimes it's inevitable depending on what expectations going in were. Last year, people were writing going in that Oakland would have a hard time not losing 110 games with all the young pitchers and whatnot they were going with. And, of course, then they finished just below 500. So Art Howe must have done a great job. This year, based on what they did last year, there were some pretty high expectations. They added Canseco with all of that power, with Brocious, who had a fine year last year, Giambi, Berroa. I thought they were really going to score some big-time runs, but everything's just kind of come crashing down in the first half of the year. Of course, Berroa's not even with them anymore. You see the standings. Seattle has kind of taken charge in the division now. Texas hoping for a strong second half. Scott Brocious trying to pick up this run. This will be the 10th pitch of this at-bat coming from Hill to Brocious. Giambi is still at second base. Ready to go in anything with 2 down. We're in the 6th. 4-2, Texas is on top. And he popped him out. Behind the plate, Rodriguez. And for Brocious, no relief in sight. Great beginning. Nothing across for Oakland. Greer, Gonzalez, and Clark, the power coming for Texas. The Sunday night baseball game of the week, and the Texas Rangers leading Oakland 4-2 as we head into the late innings now. Inning number 7. And the big guns are coming up for Texas. Rusty Greer, who homered his last time. Then Juan Gonzalez and Will Clark. A big dropping curveball for a called strike to Greer, who has grounded a third, fly deep to center, and then he has hit an opposite field home run. Only 370 feet.
You were mentioning that Greer was, you know, his hero in his heroes was George Brett. Well, he hits similar to George Brett. He stands deep in the batter's box and he kind of dives, you know, goes into the ball.
He does
very similar.
Way off the plate.
Yeah, way off the plate. Very similar to the style that George Brett used. He was a hitter player.
Certainly worked well for George. That pitch just a bit outside. 3-1 the count. Carlos Reyes, R-E-Y-E-S, in relief of Steve Carsey. 5 innings, 4 runs, 7 hits allowed by Carsey. Reyes into his second inning of work. And Greer crunches one into right field. Back in the sunshine. Stayers makes the catch.
Well, that looked like it was an off-speed pitch. It was up, so he went out and got it. If that would have been a fastball, he probably would have hit it out. But he hit it a little bit towards the end of the bat.
Now Juan Gonzalez. Here's Matt Stairs, who's really done a fine job for the Athletics, and he'll probably be seeing a lot more action in the outfield now since Berroa was traded. You mentioned the trade, and Sandy Alderson, the general manager of the A's, mentioned one of the reasons for the trade. They were overloaded with DHs. Guys like Giambi and Seiko, Berroa, all seem best suited for the designated hitter's job. Here is Gonzalez, and the count goes to 2-0.
So how did you choose the odd man out?
I didn't choose him.
No, I thought you talked to him.
No. I thought you were going to talk to him.
I was, but I didn't get the opportunity. He wasn't on the field.
Went to the movies. 2-0 the count. And it's 3-0 to Gonzalez. You know, Gonzalez was one of the youngest in history to hit his first 100 homers. I mean, this guy just burst upon the scene. In his second full season in the big leagues, he had 43 homers. You see some of those numbers.
From the Rangers first.
That one is smashed. Way back there into left field. That is into the bleachers, the football bleachers. That would have been a souvenir in a Raiders game. Juan Gonzalez with a shot. And the fans throw it back. They don't want it. 17th home run of the year for Gonzalez, and the Rangers are hoping that the big guy is ready to bust through now. He had 2 here last night and another one tonight. That's his 3rd RBI of this game as well.
Well, let's see the target's down low. Let's see where the ball is. Well, you couldn't put it on a tee any better than that, 3-0. If Gonzalez was going to sit it on a tee, that would be where it would have been.
Now Will Clark on the outside for a called strike. Juan Gonzalez, his 231st career home run. He's already had 3 different years where he's hit over 40 home runs, and he is 27 years old. Clark jammed in the fists, and Reyes throws him out. Clark is 0 for 3. Well, that one felt pretty good. And he's talking to Benji Gill about what it's like to be
a slugger,
a guy who hits big flies a lot. And the Rangers' first 4 hitters have gotten the job done tonight. McLemore, Rodriguez, Greer, and Gonzalez, 6 out of 13, 2 homers. 4 runs scored, 5 batted in. The Rangers lead the game 5-2. McLemore, again, it's all started with McLemore, 2 hitting leadoff. He's been on base 4 times and has had a direct-handed 3 of the runs. Greer and Gonzalez have hit the home runs. Lee Stevens, the hitter. Tough slider down and in. 1 ball, 1 strike.
One of the things that Johnny Oates was talking about before the game is that they have to do it with the middle of their lineup, you know, because the other guys, they were not giving them much offense.
That is shot to right field. Stairs is going to watch it sail over his head. 1 bounce against the wall. Here comes a throw, but it's, look at that throw. Looked like a punt. Good hang time. Brocious made the fair catch and downed it in the end zone. So Stevens, who kind of stumbled as he rounded first base, and then Stayers thinking of throwing him out, and he well, the throw didn't really come that close to getting him, I'll say that. Now Dean Palmer, the guy the Rangers are hoping will be one of their big sluggers again. Tonight he's 1 for 3, but only 7 home runs for the year. He's another guy, though. He's liable to hit 10 in a week. 0-1. They say Dean Palmer is maybe the strongest of any of the Rangers, and maybe one of the strongest guys just for sheer brute strength in the American League. And that's saying something when you're on a ball club with that guy, Juan Gonzalez. 1 strike to Dean Palmer. Stevens at second. 5-2 for the Texas Rangers in the 7th inning. Mark McGwire, some people think he's pretty strong too, Joe.
Well, not only is he strong, he's got a quick bat.
And that's too low. Well, one thing is for sure, we know that Mark McGwire has the tape measure shots to back up his strength. They measured, they estimated his home run in the Kingdome the other night at 538. And Dave Niehaus, who's broadcast for the Seattle Mariners the whole history of the franchise, immediately, because I heard the description he gave on the radio of that shot, said it was the longest home run he'd ever seen at the Kingdome. And they got some guys there who hit some long home runs. Scribbler up the first base side. And that's picked up by McGwire. Squibbler
Works for me.
Yeah. I'm just like the gunner. I coined a phrase. 5-2. Check. From the Oakland Coliseum in the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area. Sunday night baseball, 5-2. Texas is leading. Stay tuned after the ball game for a very special Sports Center coming up. Keith Olbermann will make his final appearance as a Sports Center anchor. He'll team with Dan Patrick one last time to cover all of the day's sports news, including the Mike Tyson Evander Holyfield update. Wimbledon plays on Sunday, and the big unit back on the mound. There's some Olbermann fans. Stay tuned for Keith's last show coming up right after the ball game. First ball swinging, Brent Maine into the left field corner. That is a foul ball. Third base umpire Cubby Culbreth making the call. Maine is already into second base, but there's Culbreth, and he immediately ruled foul. Some tough break there for Brent Maine and for Art Howe. 5-2. Texas is leading, last of the 7th.
Well, you can see that the ball lands foul. Well, not a good angle there for us to tell, but it was foul. I'm looking down that line myself. Well, let's see if we can get a look here. Yeah, just barely foul.
Man.
Baseball is a game of inches, John. You know that.
Who said that?
Abner Doubleday or something? It's been around a long time.
Yeah, close personal friend of yours.
Yeah.
Brent Maine has walked and hit one right back to Ken Hill.
Maybe Bob Prince said that.
High pop-up foul. And at the vast expanse of foul territory, Dean Palmer goes back to catch it, and there is one down.
That is something about this game. I mean, from 1 inch or so from having a double, we'll pop up to third.
So Maine unable to get the break there. Yeah, and you see there the frustration coming out. It's also, I mean, it's a game of failure.
Yes.
The best will fail, and having to resign yourself to that fact, to handle that failure when it comes. The bullpen is busy. For the Rangers, Xavier Hernandez is the right-hander, number 31. Ed Vosberg, the lefty, still out. McDonald's been on base twice. He's singled and walked, and he also has hit a comeback. He's 1 for 2 officially.
John, you're right. The best hitters fail 7 out of 10 times. Unless you're Larry Walker, he only fails 6 out of 10 times.
And it's 2-1 to McDonald. Or Tony Gwynn, when people talk about you. And he's only hitting .393.
Yeah. Only.
Gwynn, he had quite a weekend at Dodger Stadium. I mean, we always know he gets a lot of hits, but he was driving in runs. He had an inside the park grand slam one night and a 3-run double the next down there. The Padres went in. Took 3 out of 4 from the Dodgers. Gwynn had 9 RBIs in that series. The Dodgers came back today and beat them for the first time in a while. Right to Clark. Will Clark gets the unassisted put out. McDonald is gone. 2 men down.
Well, this is what you need if you're Ken Hill. Kind of an easy inning. I don't know. He's not out of it yet. But the first 2 hitters he's been able to retire. He needs a quick inning. He has not had one for quite a while.
Ken Hill, he got out of big trouble in the 6th. They had 2 men on and nobody out, and they did not score.
And he walked the bases loaded in the 3rd inning, and he got Mark McGuire on a ground ball.
First pitch, he got him. Bornegau in the right center. Gonzalez. That is the inning. First 1-2-3 inning of the game for Hill. 5-2, Texas. The ESPN Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week is brought to you by Monsoon Audio Systems. Power, attitude, audio for the road. And by the Home Depot, where low prices are just the beginning. I'm John Miller with Joe Morgan, your Sunday night telecasters. We're in Oakland tonight. Next Sunday, Joe, Ken Griffey Jr. and the Seattle Mariners in Anaheim. And it was sort of a sneak preview of the All-Star game, the final Sunday before the All-Star break, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific.
Well, let's hope Griffey Jr. is okay. You know, he's been DHing, which is not his favorite position lately. He had a little slight hamstring pull, so, you know, maybe now by that time he'll be healthy.
Well, he's played the last couple of days. But no home runs since coming back after pulling the hamstring. The batter, Cedeno, ground ball to the shortstop, Bornegal, and he throws him out, and there is one man gone here in the 8th inning. Now, the first half of the season, I mean, traditionally ends at the All-Star break, but really teams are hitting that actual numerically end of the first half of the season right now. And we still got 3 guys on this pace to challenge the Maris and Ruth home run record. Griffey and McGuire both with 29 homers, and now 27 home runs for Tino Martinez. On the bunch by Buford, thrown out nicely by Scott Brocious for the 2nd out.
Well, nice play there by Brocious, and the one thing you have to do when you're not hitting is play good defense, and he is a good defensive third baseman.
So 2 men are gone for Texas here in the 8th inning, and leadoff man Mark McLemore just had a sensational game tonight. Will come up. He has singled, stolen a base, and scored a run. He has walked and scored a run. He has singled a homer run on a clutch 2-out base hit, and he has walked again. So he's been on base 4 times as the leadoff man. One strike. There's Buddy Groom, a left-hander up in the bullpen now for Oakland. McLemore back to his right. Spezio throws him out, and Reyes has a 1-2-3 inning. The first time that's happened to Texas in this game. The power's coming up. Matt Stayers, then McGuire and Canseco. 5-2 Texas. 5-2 Rangers as we go to the last of the 8th. Mark McGuire up 2nd in the inning. And, of course, last Tuesday against Randy Johnson, he hit one of the longest home runs anybody'd ever seen.
The 3-2 pitch to McGuire. Swing and a high fly ball belted. And I mean belted deep to left field into the upper deck. My, oh, my. What a shot by McGuire.
And that's the great longtime voice of the Seattle Mariners on his radio call, Dave Niehaus. And it was breathtaking by all accounts. They measured it at 538 feet. Niehaus went on in that same description to say that, and you see Matt Stayers leading it off for Oakland here in the 8th inning. It was the longest home run he'd ever seen at the Kingdome. And Matt Stayers trying to get on base in front of the big sluggers here. He's been very good at getting on base. Tonight he's 1 for 2 with the walks. He's been on base twice. He came into the game hitting .365. But right now they're down by 3. They got McGuire on deck and then Canseco. So this is the part of the order to try and make something happen. 5-2. Texas leading last of the 8th inning. McGuire, and there's Canseco. As we used to say, he's in the hole. 1 ball and 2 strikes. The Texas bullpen is busy. Even as Hill comes out here to work in the 8th inning. There is Xavier Hernandez warming up in the Ranger bullpen. Straight back. 1 ball and 2 strikes. Stayers has really been a journeyman. Yeah, but he had a hard time finding regular work anywhere. Last year got into 61 games for Oakland. He used quite often as a pinch hitter. The year before, he was in Boston with the Red Sox. Also spent time with Montreal. There's a shot deep into right center field. That one is gone. And that is his 12th home run of the year in only 118 at-bats. And so, with the big home run hitters coming up, Oakland is hoping that the home run parade has only just begun. 5-3 now for Texas.
Well, with 2 strikes, he did not cut down on his swing. He was still jumping at it. And he got a pitch he could handle and hit it out of here.
Johnny Oates has made the call. Kenny Hill will not have a chance to face Mark McGuire or Canseco. The next 2 hitters due up. Oates takes the ball, and in comes Xavier Hernandez to pitch. 5-3 now for Texas. Matt Stayers goes deep. Mark McGuire stands in now against Xavier Hernandez. McGuire has homered to left, hit into a force play, and he has Grounded out on a check swing. Look at that. He took a fastball right in there for a called strike.
Yeah, that one was moving away a little bit, though. And I think Mark wanted to see they'd thrown him like 5 consecutive sliders. I think he wanted to see what else they were going to do here with a new pitcher.
Ooh, he got it past him.
Well, John, the earlier part of this series, they were getting McGuire out with the fastball. They had good fastball, getting the ball up and throwing it by him. The first fastball he saw today hit over the left field wall, so they've thrown him a lot of breaking balls. But now a fastball up and out of the strike zone is probably what they should try. Like that, but not quite that high.
No, that was up.
Yeah, but not quite that high. Just a high fastball up around a little above the athletics there.
Well, he's had some success in the past against Hernandez.
Yes.
4 hits, including a home run in 8 previous at-bats against him. Second baseman McLemore playing almost right behind second base with McGuire. And a changeup to strike him out.
Beautiful pitching there. He threw the wasted the high fastball, get him to think that they're going to get him out with the high fastball, came back with a change.
So you mean that real high one served a purpose?
Yes, it did. I mean, it showed your speed. Here's the point. You're showing him a speed. The high fastball, now you come back, he thinks maybe he'll throw me another one. No, it's a changeup. And a good changeup looks like a fastball when he releases it. You have to have the same arm speed, and he does that here. Look at that. I mean, that's just great arm speed there on that changeup. But it looked like he had to choked it down with all 4 fingers. Beautiful pitch.
So now Canseco comes up. Canseco 2 for 3, a single and a double, and he gets a fastball for a strike. First McGuire, now Canseco has taken a first pitch fastball.
There's not so much as you throw a fastball, or you have to locate it well. And the first 2 fastballs have been away from these sluggers.
It was very much away. 1 ball, 1 strike. Canseco hit a double into the right field corner in the 4th inning. And then hit a single to center in the 6th inning. 2 for 3 in the game. Giambi on deck. If Canseco gets aboard, Giambi would have a chance to tie it up. On the pitch, and he rips one down the left field line. And over the wall. An automatic double for Canseco. Right over Catfish Hunter's retired jersey out there. Man, that was pretty good quickness right there, and a pitch inside.
It was actually a good pitch, but Canseco is just strong, and he muscles this ball to left field for a double. I mean, that's a pretty good pitch. He was away with 2 pitches. Now he comes in. I mean, that ball's way in, and Canseco's able to get the bat through. He doesn't rip it, but he's just so strong that when he hits it hard down the left field line, it just bounces over the wall. He didn't get it out on the good part of the bat. Then Xavier Hernandez sent us out, made a good pitch. He just hit it. And I think sometimes as a pitcher, you have to say that to yourself. I threw it where I wanted. He hit it. You have to give the hitter some credit as well.
Canseco had hit 4 home runs in the last 10 games before tonight. Tonight, 2 doubles and a single. And here is Giambi, who is the possible tying run. And they have a left-hander up in their bullpen. But Oates is staying with the right-hander Hernandez. And that changeup misses. 1 ball and no strikes. And Vosburg, who has been up 2 other times, is still up in the Ranger bullpen. We're in the last of the 8th inning. Rangers lead 5-3. Jason Giambi, 1 for 2 with a walk tonight. That's a strike to the outside. 1 ball, 1 strike. Giambi has a brother, Jeremy, who's also a ball player in the Kansas City Royals farm system. The name of the team for which he plays is the Lansing Lugnuts. But I hear he's pretty good, and he is the pride of the Lugnuts. 1 ball, 1 strike to Giambi. Xavier Hernandez, who hails from the Houston area, and at one point pitched for Houston. And that is 2-1 now. Giambi's a very tough hitter who has been in a very hot streak. His hitting streak just ended a few days ago.
Hernandez has been very successful against left-handed hitters. They're hitting .224, and that's probably why he's leaving him in instead of bringing in Vosburg to pitch to Giambi.
2 balls and a strike. Canseco leading from second. That is a base hit to left field. Greer was very deep. Canseco will come around and score. And now it is a 1-run game. Giambi with his 42nd RBI of the season, and he will be lifted now for a pinch runner. The much faster Damon Mayshore goes in to run, representing the possible tie run. There's Mayshore.
Well, Giambi has proven that he's a good hitter. That ball there is running away, but it didn't get it away as much as he wanted. You see kind of inside out that even though it's down the middle. And he finds a hole on the left side. And Dick Bosman's going to come out. I don't know. He hasn't made the call, and I think Johnny Oates is the one that would change the pitchers.
Well, they've got Fosberg, the left-hander, and he's been joined out there now by the closer. Although it's not the ninth inning as of yet, but John Wetland has now gotten up in the Texas bullpen. So there's Mayshore, Brad Fisher, the first base coach, and Will Clark. 5-4 for Texas here. The Rangers need a win to get out of here with a split in this series. And John Wetland, number 35, as we said now, up in the Ranger bullpen. Fosberg, at this point, has warmed up 2 other times already, so he's already warm. So now the possible tying run is over at first base in the person of Damon Mayshore. He has 5 steals for the year, and Spezio, a switch hitter, takes one of the dirt, knocked down nicely by Rodriguez. Now, against some teams, Arnau might be thinking, let's pick a good pitch and try and steal a base here, but that's where Ivan Rodriguez, I mean, he is a weapon for Texas.
Well, he definitely makes you rethink your strategy of trying to steal a base. You may put a hit and run on, but you're not going to go probably straight steal in this situation.
There's Mayshore at first, getting his lead. And this checks him. And it's too low again. It is 2-0 to Spezio, who's 0 for 2 with a sacrifice fly. When Texas leaves here, by the way, they continue on the road. Their next stop is one that they've never made before. They go from here to Dodger Stadium. They got 2 games against the Los Angeles Dodgers, as interleague play begins again tomorrow. And that certainly does not promise to be an easy stop for the Rangers to face that great Dodger pitching. That is low. 3-0.
Well, Hernandez has been trying to get Spezio to chase a pitch. He's starting that pitch and a strike zone is sinking out, but so far Spezio has not taken the bait.
The count and a strike. So it is 3-1. The Oakland bullpen is also busy right now. There's the tall right-hander, number 22 is Billy Taylor, and Aaron Small, number 30, is the other right-hander. 3-1 to Spezio. We'll keep an eye on Mayshore. He's the possible tying run. Only 1 out. He's holding. He might have chased ball 4 right there, Spezio, but lifted it out of play, and it's a full count, 3-2.
Well, we'll see what Art Howe is thinking right here, but I mean, this is a perfect situation to start the runner. You see him looking over his lineup card. Actually, he's looking over the Texas card to see who they have down in the bullpen, who they have. He's telling someone to get ready to get a bat. Magadan, Dave Magadan. I'm sure that's who he's talking about.
3-2 the count. Mayshore at first. He is not running. And it is ball 4.
Well, here comes the cat and mouse game here because Scott Brocious is coming up to the plate. Now, if you're Johnny Oates, do you go ahead and make the change now and bring in a right-hander to pitch to Brocious, or do you let Xavier Hernandez pitch to Brocious with the idea that they're going to call Brocious back, which they should be doing? And that's exactly, I think Johnny Oates won this cat and mouse game so far.
You saw Magadan heading over to the bat rack there, number 17, a moment ago. Well, they tried to provoke Johnny Oates into making the move. If he was going to make a move to John Wetland, but No move was forthcoming, and so finally Art Howe decided, well, we'd rather have Magadan up there in this spot. The veteran left-handed hitter. And now Wetland continues to heat up in the bullpen for Texas.
Well, the question now is, do you bring in Vosberg to pitch to Magadan and risk Art Howe making another move? Yeah, I guess that's what he's going to do here. He's going to bring it, or is he going to bring in Wetland? He's going to bring in Wetland. He says, I got to go for it right here.
So either way, Oates had Wetland in mind. The closer comes on with only 1 out of the 8th inning. The possible tying run at second. 5-4, Texas will be back. Rangers 5, Athletics 4, last of the 8 for the possible tying run. He is just a base hit away. Damon Mayshore, a speedy runner at second, and there's last year's World Series MVP, John Wetland, 5th in the American League in saves for the Texas Rangers. And the veteran Dave Magadan is at the plate. Mayshore getting his lead from second. Spezio at first. And there is ball 1. Magadan, 255. Still very, very discriminating at the plate. He does not often swing at bad balls. He still has a very high on-base percentage. There is Mayshore, the possible tying run. And over at first base, Spezio, the possible go-ahead run. We're in the 8th inning. That's a base hit to right field. Here comes Mayshore. Gonzalez up and throwing. Offline, and the Athletics have tied the ball game. Spezio to third base. Magadan delivers in the clutch.
I guess you can always look back and wonder, but I never want Dave Magadan hitting in clutch situations because he's always going to get a good pitch to hit because he doesn't swing a lot of bad pitches. And I would rather have someone else hitting than Magadan. And we'll take a look here. Fastball inside part of the plate. Not a bad pitch from Wetland, but Magadan finds a hole. And the one thing to remember, last year most people thought the only difference between the Yankees and the Rangers was their stoppers and their bullpen, their late inning relief. And now that Wetland is over here, they figured they had an edge, but it has not worked out that way so far this season.
Well, John Wetland gets charged with a save blown here. Now another pinch hitter for Oakland for Brent Maine. Mark Bellhorn, another Oakland rookie, will come up. Wetland with his first save last night in 2 weeks. He had a couple of blown saves in Denver as he and the Rangers in the interleague play went to Colorado and found out about life at Coors Field. So now Wetland will, and I think unfairly, get charged with a blown save in this ball game.
I agree.
Some other relief pitchers, or in this case, Xavier Hernandez, had a lot more to do with giving up this lead than did John Wetland. Now the pitching coach comes out, and Joe, with a 5-5 ball game, you got the rookie Bellhorn up, and who knows much about him, but also with 1 out, I guess you got to be wary of the suicide squeeze here.
Yeah, Art Howe will use it every once in a while, but I don't think he's a fan of the suicide squeeze. I think he's out there talking to Bellhorn, just telling him as much as he knows about John Wetland, and that is probably that he's going to come after you, so be ready. The Rangers are going to play the infield in. And they're playing pretty much all the way in. They're not playing halfway. If you play halfway, a one hopper to the second baseman, you could turn 2. But the way they're playing this defense, they can't do that because the shortstop is too far from second base to be able to turn a double play on a one hopper.
Bellhorn had hit .326 at Edmonton in AAA ball with 11 home runs. In the dirt. Saved by Ivan Rodriguez. Big save right there. This time of the game, I remember Sparky Anderson once saying, you're managing 8th inning of a tight ball game. You got to look at this run. If it scores, is the run that beats you.
Well, I think that's what they're saying here. That's why they're playing the infield all the way in and not playing for the double play.
Now, Bellhorn is a very good bunter. That's a called strike. He's only been in the big leagues less than 3 weeks, and he's already tied for the team lead in sacrifice bunts.
Well, the two things work against you right here, in my opinion, if you're going to try to squeeze. And that is that the hitter is left-handed. So if John Wetland sees the runner going, all he has to do is throw the ball up and away, and he can't cross the plate to get to it.
They are going with the squeeze, and it's bunted foul in the air. And just not playable for Dean Palmer.
Well, you have to give them a good job there of decoying, because the runner at third did not break right away. He did not break too quickly. Now he doesn't break too quickly. See, the ball's on its way to the plate already, which is good. If he breaks too quickly, all they have to do is throw that ball up and away, and there's no way that the left-handed hitter can reach across the plate and foul it.
And I tell you what, he almost, by bunting it in the air like that, he almost did something worse than if he did just missed it altogether. He almost bunted into a double play. Just outside, and it is 2-2. Bellhorn also, when he has not been bunting, has had some problems making contact. He's had 48 official at-bats and has struck out 16 times, or 1 out of every 3. 5-5. 3 runs home for the Athletics here in the 8th inning. Spezio at third, Magadan at first. Just missing. 3-2. All right. Does Magadan run with a guy who strikes out a lot at the plate?
Well, I don't think they're going to send him, because again, everything's in their favor. Just try to let him put the ball in play. They can't hit into a double play because they're not set up to make the double play.
There he goes. Pop fly, shallow left. Greer on the run. Can't get there. And Oakland has gone ahead. Spezio scores. The shortstop, Cedeno, racing out just as hard as Greer was racing in. And ironically, had the infield been back in normal depth, Cedeno might have been able to get to that ball.
Well, that's the risk you take when you play the infield in. You're not going to have a lot of range. You're not going to be able to cover a lot of ground. I mean, this ball hits him on the fist. I mean, he just barely popped it over the infield. You see Palmer, no chance for him to get back there. And you see Barnagal racing out there. He just can't get there. I mean, Cedeno, I'm sorry. He just can't get there. And the A's take the lead here in the 8th inning. They've scored 4 runs here in the bottom of the 8th inning.
And the glum look there from Ken Hill, who's had a hard time getting wins this year. Only 4 wins. That one is shot down the right field line by McDonald. It is foul. A foul ball. Another foul ball for Oakland by the narrowest of all possible margins. And Greg Koss made the call on that one. First base umpire. Magadan back to second. Bellhorn back to first.
Well, you see McDonald, he turns on this fastball, and it actually stays there a long time. It didn't really just hook. And you can see just barely foul down the right field line.
Wow.
Very close. I didn't see any chalk, so.
Well, as Bob Prince used to say, that was foul by less than the length of a gnat's eyelash. 2 men on. Magadan at second and Bellhorn at first. Now John Wetland just trying to save the 1-run deficit. Oh man, what happened there? I think he faked out the umpire, Joe. That sharp curveball. 1 ball, 1 strike.
Well, the one thing to remember is, you said it, John Wetland pitched a little bit yesterday. It wasn't a tough save, but he still pitched.
Wetland is from this area. He went to the College of San Mateo just across the bay. They've had a very fine baseball program over there for a long time. John Noche was his coach. He developed a number of big leaguers in his program. 2 balls and a strike that count to Jason McDonald, the 8th batter of the inning. The Athletics have put 4 runs on the board here in the 8th, 3 against the Texas bullpen. That is right to Clark. He goes to second 1. Cedeno back to Wetland covering off his ball.
Working for the plate, Magadan. The throw. 2. Down to second base. McDonald. He's in there.
Magadan had stopped at third and even thought about it twice before he finally took off. As that one rolled away from Wetland And for the Rangers, maybe the ball game itself rolled right away with it.
Well, they tried to make the toughest of all double plays at 3-6-3. And you see Clark, he's so wide in the back, he can't get back. Now, Cedeno tries to hit Wetland on the move. And you can see the ball's off of Wetland's glove. And it took, you're right, it took Magadan so long to decide to come to the plate.
You saw there, Rodriguez actually never even caught the ball. So he tagged Magadan with an empty glove.
Magadan had the play beat by the time they did make the throw to the plate anyway. But I guess the question is decide whether the error goes to the pitcher or the shortstop.
And they're going to give it to the shortstop. And that allows the run to score and allows McDonald to go to second base. So it is 7-5. 5 runs in for Oakland and a curveball. Strike 2 to Rafael Bornegal, who was 0 for 4. And Billy Taylor warming up in the Oakland bullpen. He's been the Oakland closer. The Rangers will have their very best hitters coming up in the 9th inning. Rodriguez, Greer, and Gonzalez to face that man, Billy Taylor. Will Clark will be due up 4th. Lee Stevens 5th. So all of their power will be coming up. Check swing foul by Bornegal.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the 2 key hitters in this inning have been the left-handers, Giambi, and of course Magadan. And I guess, again, the question would be when Giambi was up there, he was representing the tying run, and he's one of the A's best hitters. And they had Vosberg in the bullpen, the left-hander, but Johnny Oates chose not to bring him in. And Giambi got a base hit, and he ended up scoring the tying run.
For Mayshore, who went in as a runner
Yeah,
for
I'm sorry,
him.
yeah, the runner for Giambi.
But really, it is Giambi's run. And
Yeah.
Johnny Oates went with the statistics, as you pointed out, that said Xavier Hernandez has had great success against lefties. And Vosberg has been struggling this year. But he's not had nearly the year that he had last year, and he's been slumping lately. He's been scored upon in 3 of his last 5 games. That's a foul off the right field line. At any rate, Xavier Hernandez gets charged with 3 of the runs in this inning. And it's his game to lose.
I guess if you're looking at it, you know, from the perspective of looking at statistics all the time, then maybe you're right. You know, he hasn't, you know, he's been scored upon 3 out of 5 times. But I look at it in matchups, and I just have to match up a left-hander against Giambi because he's a much better hitter against right-handers.
And that's right back to the screen again. 0-2. It's 11 o'clock back in the East, 8 here Pacific. And stay tuned now for a very special Sports Center coming up next. Keith Olbermann will make his final appearance as a Sports Center anchor. He and Dan Patrick team up one last time on the big show to cover all of the day's sports, including the Tyson Holyfield update at Wimbledon, playing on Sunday. The big unit back on the mound up in Seattle. Keith Olbermann's last show coming up after the game. And that will be foul again. But then who knows, Joe, when that will be. Baseball being the sort of game that it is. And if the game goes on for much longer, what will Keith have to say about the length of this American League game? One last time on his final Sports Center. He may be back at the computer even now, composing some new intros to the highlights of this game. 2 strikes to count, the curveball in the dirt from Wetland to Bornegal, the 9th batter of the inning. Matt Stairs, who led off the inning with a home run. It seemed like it happened in the first game of a doubleheader, but that's the very same inning that we're in right now. There's Matt Stairs.
Well, John, when you see John Wetland throwing as many breaking balls as he is throwing, that tells you that, you know, he doesn't feel that he has his best fastball today.
Curveball, and he struck him out. But 5 runs score for Texas. Rodriguez, Greer, and Gonzalez. Last chance for Texas. 7-5, Oakland. From the Oakland Coliseum, Sunday Night Baseball, we move to the 9th inning, 7-5, Oakland. We'd like to thank the folks at Miller Brewing once again for their great aerial views of tonight's ball game. They're being provided by a unique television airplane called the Miller Eagle. The Eagle is the newest eye in the sky on sports television. Mark Bolano is the pilot for the Miller Eagle, and our thanks to them. We always love to have them on Sunday Night Baseball. Well, here's Billy Taylor. And for Billy Taylor this year, you have to take the good with the bad. Sometimes he's been very good. Other times he is not. His earned run average, 5.94. Ivan Rodriguez is the hitter, and he takes a called strike. The new catcher is George Williams, hitting 9th in the order. Staying in the game to play left field, Damon Mayshore, who ran for Giambi. And moving in to play third base after pinch hitting for Brocious, Dave Magadan. That slider. And it's 1-1. Taylor certainly gives you a different look.
Yes, he does. Kind of that sidewinder look.
1 ball, 1 strike. Taylor, 6 feet 8 inches tall. Fastball is wafted high and foul and out of play. 1 ball and 2 strikes now. Well, tough times for John Wetland and for the Texas Rangers. If they lose this game, it will be their 10th loss in the last 12. And, of course, the whole idea of getting Wetland for Texas was that last year they had some problems at the end of games. And they took a 5-2 lead into the 8th inning. And, again, by the time Wetland got in there, it was already 5-4. And there were 2 men on base when he got in there. But both of them ended up scoring, and another one scored against Wetland's record on the error. And that is a foul tip held by Williams, and Ivan Rodriguez unable to get on base. They need a base runner here in front of one of their big sluggers. Rodriguez unable to get aboard.
Well, he threw him a fastball away. This is a sidearm breaking ball. See Rodriguez trying to stay there, but he opens up just a little too quickly, and it's hard not to. Ball starts inside and breaks toward the plate. You see his front shoulder pretty much gone, but it's tough to stay in there when you don't get the chance to see the ball coming from that position very often. There's Art Howe bringing in Mayshore in left field. He says you're too deep.
Come on, Mac.
He yells at Dave Magadan to be alive for the bunt.
Rusty Greer, the hitter, takes a sinker for a ball. Greer homered in the 5th inning. He's also hit 2 deep fly balls tonight. He's 1 for 4 overall. He gets on. Gonzalez would come up as the possible tying run. And that one sinks too low. 2-0 to Greer. Greer is hitting .336. Ivan Rodriguez came into the game hitting .353, but is 1 for 5. That misses. Ball 3. Well, this is at this point, the Rangers' best scenario. Greer gets on, and Gonzalez has a chance to tie it. And he gets on. A 4-pitch walk in front of the reigning American League MVP. And Art Howe back to the lineup card. The Rangers have not used any of their players off the bench. And one of their players off the bench, Joe, is a veteran who's got a lot of home run power, the switch-hitting Mickey Tettleton. Who could sort of counter any move that they want to make. There's Tettleton in the background there. Just recently off the disabled list. Here is Gonzalez. He has a home run tonight. Strike. Gonzalez has 3 home runs the last 2 nights. He has driven in 3 of the Rangers' 5 runs in this game. His homer in the 7th inning against Carlos Reyes was a shot into the bleachers out there in left field, high above the field of play. Bullpen activity for the Athletics as Billy Taylor gets himself into some trouble here in the 9th. Greer at first, 1 out.
And Gonzalez has not fared well against Taylor. He's 0 for 8 with 4 punch-outs. So he has not put the ball in play safely yet for a base hit.
Aaron Small, the right-hander. Buddy Groom, the left-hander. Gonzalez fouls one back to the screen. 0-2 the count.
And for a lot of people who say, well, the guy's sidearm, he kind of scares you, that's not really what happens. What happens is you're so used to looking at pitchers come 3/4, and you look for the ball from that spot. And when a guy drops down and throws from a different area, you have trouble picking up the ball, so quite naturally, you do panic a little bit. And a lot of right-hand sidearmers, you have trouble picking the ball up as quickly as you like. And that's where the trouble comes in. It's not that you're afraid, because guys throwing 90 miles an hour straight over the top can hurt you as well, but you're just not used to picking the ball up from here.
He just got a piece of it. That one fouled off the catcher. George Williams still 0-2 to Gonzalez.
I don't think that's exactly where you want to throw that pitch. He's throwing a sidearm fastball that runs back in, but if Gonzalez bails it all and that ball stays on the inside, you can get hurt. So I think he was better away.
Well, you see Mickey Chettleton has gone to the bat rack for the Rangers, just in case.
Well, I think he would hit for Lee Stevens if that happens. I don't think he's going to hit for Will Clark.
Again, boring in under the hands, and again, Gonzalez just got a piece of it. There's Will Clark on deck. They've got the left-hander Buddy Groom up in the bullpen, perhaps for the purpose of facing Will Clark. One down in the 9th inning. Gonzalez has fouled off 3 here, just barely making contact all 3 times.
Well, he's, got him conscious of the inside fastball. Now you probably should try to throw a breaking ball away, just kind of a waste pitch. See if he could get Gonzalez to chase it.
He swings it. It's a soaring fly ball down the left field line. In for it is Mayshore. Out for it is shortstop. And Mayshore calls him off and makes the catch. Calling off Bornegal, who just did get out of his way.
Well, they made up their mind they were going to stay inside, and they threw a fastball in, and they got away with it again. So it's a fastball, and it's going to be inside, and he just misses it. And the ball, he thinks it was foul, looks like, and then it starts to come back to fair territory, and he decides he better run.
Well, Mayshore came in to catch it, and now with Will Clark coming up and 2 down, the left-hander Buddy Groom will come on to face him. Sports Center follows the ball game. Keith Olbermann's last show. But it's not over just yet. We'll be back. Twilight time here in the San Francisco, Oakland Bay Area. And at the Oakland Coliseum, the Athletics, who've had a very poor first half of the year, but have had a very great night, trailing 5-2 into the 8th inning against the defending Western Division champion Rangers. But a 5-run 8th has put them ahead 7-5. Now Buddy Groom, a left-hander, comes on to face the veteran Will Clark, who is the possible tying run with 2 down. Runner at first. First ball swinging, left field, deep. Going back Mayshore, now circling back in. He makes the catch, and the ball game is over. So Clark, on 1 pitch, makes the final out of the ball game, and the Athletics have taken this series 3 out of 4. The misery continues for John Wetland and the Texas Rangers. They have lost 10 of their last 12 and are 8 games behind Seattle now in the American League West. Final, Oakland 7 and Texas 5. Stay tuned now. Sports Center coming up next. Next Sunday will be in Anaheim. Ken Griffey Jr. and the Mariners against Jim Edmonds and the Angels, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. The final game before the All-Star break. We hope that you will join us then. So once again, the final score is 7-5 for the Oakland Athletics over the Texas Rangers. Gonzalez and McGuire both going deep. Stay tuned now. Keith Olbermann's final Sports Center coming up next. Now this is John Miller for Joe Morgan. Thanks for joining us. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports.